Morning, glory, America, bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings from California. I'm on the East Coast most of the year. I come to the West Coast in December and January. They've got a bill in California, by the way, to make it 60 days or less turns you into a California resident. I'm a Virginia resident, and I pay Virginia taxes, not California taxes. 60 days as opposed to 6 months. That's going to drive the state right into the ground, as all of the snowbirds are going to flee, including me. I won't be here 61 days, if that's the case, but that's just going to destroy restaurants. I think the desert will open up and swallow itself into the ground. Hank Adler wrote about that in the Wall Street Journal last week, but I digress. Good morning. There are two stories. The first story is the COVID relief bill was passed. The defense authorization bill vetoed by President Trump was overridden in the House and will be overridden in the Senate. And the House proposed adding $1,400 per relief check to recipients of the $600 relief check. It is highly unlikely that Mitch McConnell will bring up that proposal because there are very, very, very good ways to actually distribute an additional $450 to $475 billion. That's the estimated cost of the additional 14 that are far superior than shotgunning checks. Now, if you are in desperate need of that check, you object. You say, no, I need that money. And I understand that. Some people are behind on their rent. Some people's businesses have closed. Some people have no more savings. I would rather get you $5,000 than send $2,000 to people who are just fine. Because they have taken risks. We're not rewarding risks. This is a rescue bill. It's not a stimulus bill. Some people have been on the front line, doctors, nurses, grocery store workers, Target employees, Costco employees, all those people, Amazon warehouse employees, all those people have been out there working, but they don't need the $2,000 check. And so I do not think Mitch McConnell is going to bring it up. And I think it's because it is completely necessary to get relief out, but shotgunning, I just don't think that's smart. That's story number one. We'll follow that today, what Mitch McConnell does. Story number two is the vaccine distribution screw up. And this went everywhere last night. There are more than 11 million doses somewhere in the United States of the vaccine. Now, we got 350 million people. We got to vaccinate them all, although we're not vaccinating children yet until some studies come in. But we got to vaccinate them all. And there are some horror stories out there about onset of psychoses in a tiny, tiny number of people who had the virus in the spring. And secondary effects. I mean, we really do want to get this out there in a hurry. And it's great that we've got it. And distribution is, what a surprise, bollocksed up. That's because it's up to the counties. Not a federal government, it's not a state government, it's a county thing. Now, there are 3,000 counties in the United States. They are called parishes in Louisiana and covens in Pennsylvania. And 48 states call them counties. Parishes in Louisiana and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania calls them covens. So in the Pittsburgh coven, and that's Allegheny coven, actually, things are screwed up. And in Orange County, California, things are screwed up. And the reason I began investigating this last night is I knew I would call 1-800-520-1234. I'd like to hear from doctors, medical professionals, people involved in the distribution. I don't want to hear your opinion. I want to know from people, if there's anyone out there, what you think of the distribution of the virus vaccine. Because I talked to a doctor yesterday in Southern California. I said, what do you think? What's going on? And boy, did I get an earful. I got an earful. Let me go to read the beginning of this. Now you have hit a raw political nerve. When government takes control of a commodity, they usually screw it up, and they have. As a primary care physician, I used to have a primary role as a medical care provider in my community. I used to be able to take care of patients and make patient care decisions. More and more are being made by non-physicians, administrators, and bureaucrats. The bureaucrats do not live by the Hippocratic Oath that I am obliged to follow. It makes no sense to me that vaccines are being distributed in a new manner and methodology other than the traditional route. Physicians should be able to get access to these vaccines and then vaccinate the highest at-risk cohort group. The highest at-risk cohort group are the frontline treating physicians and, most importantly, the elderly and convalescent care homes. It upsets me very much when I see low-risk individuals receive the vaccinations before the high-risk individuals get vaccinated. But isn't that part of a new cultural norm that the elites and those well-connected in political circles get priority. Isn't that just like socialism and communism in other countries? Do you want me to talk more? I have very strong opinions on the whole upside-down structure of the medical system. I said, what about Orange County, California? The problem here is that the Board of Supervisors, leading on the experience of the Orange County Health Department director, and that director is a psychiatrist. He is not in a position to be a public health director. The previous public health director quit because of the stress of the job, getting a lot of political negative comments, did not like it. The problem was with this person that she was an addiction medicine physician, not a public health official. Even if we have a public health official, they would lean to leftist approach to public health, which is a methodology beginning with top down. A public health director should not be creating governance rules and regulations. That, the Great Barrington Declaration, then it goes on. Is it screwed up where you are? So I began to investigate last night. Now, I am healthy 64. I'm not eligible for this thing for a long time. And nor do I need it because I can stay relatively isolated. And Dwayne tried to give me the COVID yesterday. He goes out and about on his scooter and therefore is exposed, but he tried to give it to me yesterday. But it wasn't successful. And I'm joking, of course. He's healthy and we want him to stay healthy. But I did hear of a friend who got it yesterday and they don't feel so good. Hopefully it is one of the flu-like cases where they go down for 3 or 4 days and bounce back up and don't have the after effects. That is the vast majority. It will only, the fatality rate of this is below 1%. The serious side effects is way below 1% of recovery people, as far as we know. But we do want to stop that 1%, and we do want to stop the spread. Hospitals are jammed in California. I'm sure they're jammed in other parts of the country. And so we got to get this vaccine rolled out. And I used to be on a public health board, the Children and Families Commission of Orange County. For the 17 years I lived in California, I was a member of the Orange County Children and Families Commission. Met once a month, we gave away $40 to $60 million a year. The year that Gray Davis stole our money, we gave away $20 million, but we gave it away families, children under the age of 5 and their families, to make them healthy and ready for learning. It was a cigarette tax, and the money came to 9 individuals, of whom I was one. And we had no bureaucracy. We had the smallest bureaucracy in the world. We made common sense decisions based upon applications. We kept the auditing to a minimum. We were never defrauded. We did have some people who couldn't deliver. They overshot, but they were not fraud, but wildly successful. I learned a lot from that, which is keep the number of people involved in a decision to a minimum, simple, clear direction. It's the way we ran law firms for years when I was active in the practice of law. It's the way we run this radio show. I give simple, clear direction to Dwayne, and he screws it up. Actually, then he gives simple, clear direction to Adam, who gives simple, clear direction to Harley and to Big Ben. And we shouldn't say Big Ben this week. That's bad luck. And if you're listening in the Pittsburgh Coven or in Cuyahoga County, pay no attention to that last comment. I went and looked on the Orange County COVID-19 Vaccine Task Force to see what's the plan in Orange County. It reads, the plan for distribution of a COVID vaccine is a phase 1, in which high-risk, high-priority groups receive the first limited trial amounts of vaccine. And as more becomes available, more groups are included until there is enough vaccine to serve the entire population. Good. Many of the policies and procedures for vaccine distribution will be developed by the Centers for Disease Control or the California Department of Health. Why not? I don't care. But counties have the responsibility of determining their unique needs. That's it. It's the county deal in terms of identifying priority groups for vaccine providers. Orange County Health Agency vaccine planning involves using input from our staff, from medical experts, and from the community to assist us in developing procedures that meet all CDC and state regulations while addressing the unique needs of Orange County. Central to our planning is a vaccine task force. There's paragraph 3, no guidance yet. Comprised of members of at-risk groups such as healthcare workers, essential workers, ethnic communities, and older adults, and organizations such as hospitals, clinics, educational institutions, and businesses, as well as experts in ethics, faith-based issues, veterans issues, and various medical specialties. This group will address prioritization of vaccine recipients and how to address concerns about the vaccine among different demographic and workforce groups, and to make recommendations to the HCA planning staff and the HCA director. The task force was selected from input from a task force. We're talking now about task force. There is no guidance on where the vaccine is and who can get it. Nowhere on the web. just telling us about their task force, nothing about where to get the vaccine and when. That is a problem, and I suspect it's a problem everywhere. 1-800-520-1234. Counties, parishes, covens, get your act together.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
The fact is, our elections are supposed to be free and fair. Why is it a fringe point of view? I think most patriots feel the way that I do, that's simply unacceptable. It's so un-American. You've got to stop everything and do whatever it takes to right that wrong.
If the forces of evil, the forces of the establishment, were prepared to use both simple voter fraud plus cyber manipulation of the vote to steal this election, what's to stop them from doing so in the runoff in Georgia, which will take place January 5th and determine control of the Senate? What is to stop them from rigging the election using the same techniques and programs 4 years from now? That's why it's essential we fight this out. If we are unsuccessful in absolutely proving the fraud and the illegitimacy and the cyber manipulation of the 2020 election, what are the chances of our ever getting another fair election again? So if Joe Biden should unfortunately become president fraudulently, and if he pursues his policies on COVID-19 and taxes and regulation and trade and a myriad of other issues, by the end of his first year, he will make Herbert Hoover look popular. The country's economy will crash. It's indisputable. High taxes, more regulation, more government control, COVID-19 shutdowns will decimate the economy.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
The argument the president is making is that because so many laws were violated, so many time periods were violated, therefore enough fraudulent votes were filed so that it would overturn the margin of victory for Joe Biden in enough states to prevent Joe Biden from becoming president. Do I believe that that's going to work? No. Not because it's not credible, because I don't really know. I've just read the brief by Peter Navarro, which I thought was pretty persuasive. I've heard the denials by Dominion, and Dominion has filed a defamation lawsuit against Sidney Powell and others, including Rudy Giuliani. That's going to be very serious. And assuming the lawsuits are not thrown out, there will be discovery, and we're going to really have to have a real discussion and exchange over what happened. It won't be enough to overturn the election, but maybe we can get down to exactly what happened, because truth is a complete defense in defamation. And if Sidney Powell has the truth and she's being sued, she's going to win, plaintiff's going to lose. So we'll find out. I do know this. Hillary told Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances. And as I've talked about it the last couple of days, in January 2017, when a man named Donald John Trump was president,
Welcome back, America. 1-800-520-1234. This is Hugh Hewitt. I spent last night reading Orange County, California's vaccine distribution, because there are stories on CNN and Reuters last night that the vaccine distribution is bollocksed up across the United States. There are 12 million doses out there and 2 million vaccines administered. That is not a federal government issue. That is not a state government issue. That is a county by county issue. Now, in 48 states, they're called counties. In Louisiana, they're called parishes, and in Pennsylvania, they're called covens. And so the covens of Pennsylvania, we can expect to be screwed up. But the county of Orange County, it's got more medical resources. It's like Los Angeles and San Francisco and San Jose. These are places of great medical expertise. And instead, they have bureaucratized this. And I sent a text off to one doctor I know who's fairly senior in the world of county stuff. And I got back a blistering. They have politicized it completely. And so they've had this task force with 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there are probably 40 people on this task force, every one of whom I'm sure is a wonderful person. I'm sure they're all, and they have no idea how to do anything about vaccines. This is not hard. Counties, whoever is in charge, your county executive or your county board of supervisors, make a plan and publish it. Betts in Pittsburgh. Hello, Betts. You are a doctor? Oh, okay. Betts, good morning. How are you?
How are you? I've never heard of. We have counties in Pennsylvania.
No, they're covens. They're covens. The terrible things go on in you. But anyway, what's going on there?
Well, we're about to kick the Browns with.
Oh, are you a seminar caller or are you really a doctor?
Playing, and we're still going to beat them. That's the story. But with regard to the COVID vaccine, I'm a dialysis doctor, so we're working, to get our staff and patients prioritized because dialysis patients die at a 1 in 6 clip.
Absolutely.
Of this disease.
Yep.
What my experience has been with the Pfizer vaccine requires significant storage issues, so certain hospitals are getting it and distributing it. Most of what's happening, and Moderna is available, and that has better storage characteristics. Certain hospitals are getting that. So once they've vaccinated their staff, they're offering it to our dialysis staff. I think the most significant, and it's happening. I mean, I think if you look at the top-down people, it's who want a process. They're not seeing it. They want an entire process outlined. When you look at a decentralized circumstance, it is coming into hospitals, and your people are getting access to it. It might be slower, but
well, that's good news, Doc. Even if the Pittsburgh Coven if Allegheny Coven is working, and they're just letting doctors, that's what the doctor I talked to yesterday in Orange County said, just give it to the doctors. They will know where to go. They're not going to give it to their sister. They will go and give it to the dialysis patient and to the people who are administering dialysis. Do you agree with that?
Well, yes, I think so. I think it's I think the brilliance of Warp Speed has been the deregulation, and the decentralization. I think.
Yes,
and it's not without problems. It's going to be with, but I think by and large it's going well. I call it in Clarion County, in Venango County. Individual doctors are calling their hospitals and saying, "Hey, look, you've done so much. You've got so many vaccines done. I've got staff here that are frontline facing. Can you come and do it?" You have the conversations with CMOs at particular hospitals, and you get it done. It's not going to be pretty. But
no, I don't want it to be pretty. I just want it that. You're reassuring me. Honestly, if Pittsburgh doctors can organize this, anybody can. And I mean, if they can get it done in Pittsburgh, they can get it done anywhere in the United States. Dr. Betts.
Well, I don't know about Cleveland. They might have problems.
You call me on Monday when we have crushed the Steelers. This is the week, people. It's the week. This is the week that we crush the Steelers in Browns land, and we're going to get seminar callers. But the good doctor is right. Let the doctors do it. We don't need committees. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The argument the president is making is that because so many laws were violated, so many time periods were violated, therefore enough fraudulent votes were filed so that it would overturn the margin of victory for Joe Biden in enough states to prevent Joe Biden from becoming president. Do I believe that that's going to work? No. Not because it's not credible, because I don't really know. I've just read the brief by Peter Navarro, which I thought was pretty persuasive. I've heard the denials by Dominion, and Dominion has filed a defamation lawsuit against Sidney Powell and others, including Rudy Giuliani. That's going to be very serious. And assuming the lawsuits are not thrown out, there will be discovery, and we're going to really have to have a real discussion and exchange over what happened. It won't be enough to overturn the election, but maybe we can get down to exactly what happened, because truth is a complete defense in defamation. And if Sidney Powell has the truth and she's being sued, she's going to win, plaintiff's going to lose. So we'll find out. I do know this. Hillary told Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances. And as I've talked about the last couple of days, in January 2020,
we are not going to escape race. We're never going to escape race in America.
Trump was president or president-elect. There were 7 House Democrats, 7, who challenged the electors and said he was elected fraudulently because of Russian interference, and said there'd been voting machine manipulation and malfunction. Is this thing on?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
They're not going to wake
I
up.
didn't say just the rhinos. I said the rhinos and the milquetoast Republicans.
Fine, the rhinos and the
Roy Blunt. Who
right.
won't
That
fight for anything.
yeah. So that'll really work. That'll really work. That'll do it. Here, give the Senate to the Democrats. That'll wake you up.
Or just keep playing the game and keep getting made a fool of.
Okay, that's purely. It's an emotional response. There's nothing I could say. Then it's either one or, you know what? Then no, by that logic, no Republican should vote. It should be 0 votes for the Republican. And the Democrats will just say, boy, did that work. All right, look at how we scare Republicans from voting. Oh, well done, Republicans. You screwed yourselves great. Now we have the whole country, Senate, House, presidency, because some Republicans are pissed off at the election results. That's mature, folks. That is real mature. But listen, the human being is rarely rational. Rarely. That's the tragedy of the human condition. Emotions are more powerful. That's it. So if it's pure, it's 100% true on the left, and it is apparently to some percentage true on the right as well. These attacks on Mitch McConnell, who has done so much. I mean, I hate ingratitude. I hate it, as you know. That's the chief characteristic of every leftist, ingratitude to America. What McConnell has done, I have zero interest in McConnell individually. Zero.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
What do you make of a city like Minneapolis, Minnesota, that slashed the police budget by millions of dollars last night? It was a unanimous vote. These kooks originally voted to abolish the police department altogether. I'm going to give you some numbers.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Jacob Rees-Mogg tweeted minutes ago that today is the 850th anniversary of the martyrdom of St. Thomas of Canterbury, murdered in his own cathedral in defense of the church. If you're a Catholic person, you can say a prayer for the good intentions of St. Thomas of Canterbury today. 850 years. Just goes by in a blink. Really does. We'll be talking about Donald Trump in 850 years. I don't think he'll be a saint, though. I don't think anybody involved in politics ever gets to be a saint. I might be wrong about that. Someone can correct me. Some Catholic out there will know a politician who became a saint, but I really don't think that's the way that saints go. 1-800-520-1234. There have been saints in every hospital, saints in every nursing home, saints in every front-facing public dealing position in the United States, dealing with risk every day, and we need to get them vaccinated. And my worry, my deep worry, is that when I saw that Orange County task force with 40 people on it, it's an excuse not to decide. And it's an excuse not to have a plan. I don't want input. I want output. I want clear that when you Google, where do I get a vaccine in Allegheny Coven? As I said, there are counties in 48 states, parishes in Louisiana, and covens in Pennsylvania. When you Google Cuyahoga County in Ohio, where do I get the vaccine? You ought to have a one-page come up and say, these are the distribution centers. They are open currently for 75 year and older. They will be open to 70 years and older and then 60 years and older. If you have an underlying condition, contact your doctor for a free pass to the front of the line. And walk right in. We'll have a special area where people are immune, and you can come in there. It's not hard to do. I mean, I could have done this in a day. They had one job. Local governments had one job for the last year. Federal government had many jobs. PPP. Then they had to get the therapies approved. They had to get the testing up and running. They've got it all done. They had to get the money and the distribution to the states, who in turn give it to the counties. So it's a lateral. It's a hook and ladder. So Trump did everything he was supposed to do, and in record time. No one said these vaccines would be available, and now they're piling up on county shelves. Piling up on county. Now, the CDC did a couple of bad things, and the FDA did a couple of bad things along the way, but everyone makes a mistake. Everyone's doing their best. But honestly, give it to the doctors. 1-800-520-1234. Business story of the day, brought to you by Birch Gold. And you ought to be investing in gold. I have said this for years. Not everything, at least 10%. Put your gold into an IRA or a 401k that is backed by actual physical metal. Birch Gold will do that for you. They will teach you how to roll over 10 to 25% of your retirement into an asset that does not ever go to zero and often goes up. And over time, it's going to go up a lot, with $4 trillion in the United States alone, and who knows how much stimulus across the world. Birch Gold can be found at hughgold.com. Give them the information. They will send you the free information kit on how to do gold investing, or you can text my name, Hugh, to 474747. They are the specialists in that. And everybody, it's a New Year's resolution. Check your retirement platform, check your retirement assets, see if they are diversified. As every financial planner I've ever met says, diversify, diversify, diversify. Stocks, bonds, real estate, precious metals, diversify. And the precious metals part, leave that up to Birch Gold. Get to them today, hughgold.com. The business story today comes from the Financial Times. It's the second paper I read in the morning, because I start with Israel, the Times of Israel, then I go to the Financial Times and the Telegraph, then the Big Four in the United States. And this story just blew me away. Amazon's advertising business booms in pandemic. Now, I own Amazon stock, so I'm always happy to see Amazon booms, but it's not that, it's this. The surge in online shopping triggered by COVID-19 pandemic has put Amazon on the course for its first ever $100 billion quarter. But it also boosted an overlooked part of the company's business, advertising. As more and more merchants cram onto Amazon's vast marketplace, brands that want to stand out are spending heavily on Amazon ads. As a result, Amazon's, quote, other, close quote, business unit, which is made up almost entirely of its ads business, is growing faster than its retail, cloud computing, and Prime subscription divisions. According to FactSet, a financial data company, Amazon's other unit, its advertising unit, will make $21 billion in revenue in 2020, a 47% jump over last year. Its rapid growth is helping Amazon chip away at online advertising's dominant player, Google. Quote, I don't think there's enough recognition of just how big an advertising business Amazon is on the way to creating, said Andrew Lipsman, principal analyst at eMarketer. We still expect solid, if not strong, growth by traditional standards for Google in both 2020 and 2021, but increasingly Amazon is eating into its growth. Amazon offers advertisers data that is irresistible, a closed loop that shows them how effective every dollar they spend is, and more than 2 decades of insight on the actual buying habits of consumers, rather than just their web browsing habits. I can understand the better of a value of a dollar spent on Amazon because I can literally see the transaction, said Eric Heller, who runs the Amazon Center of Excellence at WPP, the world's largest ad agency, which advises on how best to use Amazon's several platforms. Mr. Heller noted several studies have now shown that people are increasingly searching for things to buy directly on Amazon rather than on Google. For marketers, Mr. Heller said, it is the difference in reaching the person searching for athlete's foot cream versus the person searching for why does my foot hurt. The vast majority of Amazon's advertising revenue is driven by this behavior, with advertisers bidding to gain prominent spots as sponsored listings at the top of product search results, capturing the attention of more than 200 million unique visitors to Amazon sites every month. According to Jungle Scout, I love that, which provides management software to third-party sellers, the most coveted searches, such as noise-canceling headphones, can sometimes be sold in excess of $7 per click, a fee paid regardless of whether or not the customer goes on to buy the product. Just over 1 in 10 clicks will on average result in a buy, according to the Marketplace Pulse, an economic research firm. That's just wild. So Amazon is the new Google. Now, why I think this is also, and Google's going to send this story from the Financial Times, which is the Wall Street Journal competitor. They're going to send this to every antitrust regulator in the world and say, you're suing us for antitrust? We have competition. And of course, Amazon is not going to be sued for antitrust in advertising because Google is the dominant player. But that is the marketplace. That's Google's defense. But my goodness, Amazon stock yesterday, let me check the market again. This is brought to you by Birch Gold. Market stocks yesterday, the Dow's up 204 points, the NASDAQ soared 94, and the S&P is up 32. Overseas, my goodness, England is up 2.15% today. I expect it will be a great day in the United States again because the stimulus got through. And Amazon yesterday went up $111 to $3,283 a share. And I expect they'll have another great day with a story like that. But more than great days, what is gold doing? Because this is brought to you by Birch Gold. And Birch Gold, $1,882. Now, it was down below. It was in the 1700s 2 weeks ago. And I told you, you cannot print this much money. The United States is printing money. Cannot print this much money without inflation. Your hedge against inflation. I mean, if the House vote actually gets its way, I don't think Mitch McConnell is going to add the $2,000 stimulus bill. There's a very complicated negotiation. It went on for weeks. President Trump came in after it was all done. Steve Mnuchin, his Secretary of the Treasury, was involved from day one. And he throws out the $2,000. The Democrats jump on that because they want people in Georgia to vote for Democrats. Don't be fooled, Georgia. This is what Chuck Schumer wants from you. Cut number one.
Now we take Georgia, and then we change the world. Yeah! I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Mr. Schumer? Now we take Georgia, and then we change America.
No, no, no. I don't want to change America. I want more freedom. I don't want more left-wing socialists like John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. I mean, Raphael Warnock is just radical. I'm sure he's a nice man. He's just a nice radical. Cut number three, Raphael Warnock running as a Democrat in Georgia.
And if it is true that a man who has dominated the news and poisoned the discussion for months needs to repent, then it is doubly true that a nation that can produce such a man and make his vitriol go viral needs to repent. No matter what happens next month, more than a third of the nation that would go along with this is reason to be afraid. America needs to repent for its worship of whiteness.
Now, I'm going to talk in hour 3 today with Michael Eric Dyson about this book, Long Time Coming, Reckoning with Race in America. It's a very good read. We'll have a very good conversation. He, like Raphael Warnock, believes that America has to repent and work on its whiteness. I do not. That doesn't mean we can't have a great conversation. We will have a great conversation. But in Georgia, early voting is underway. Georgia, you must go out and vote for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. That is the firewall in the Senate. That means funding the Defense Department. That means turning away Biden judges who are crazy left-wingers. That means doing everything the right way. It means not showering the world with money. There's a price to be paid for this. We have to do it. We have to get businesses reopened. We have shuttered them. The government shut them down. They did not fail because of the dynamic destruction of capitalism. They failed because the government shuttered them, and we owe them money, but we do not hose down the country with money. We have done that before. It doesn't work. And Raphael Warnock is a radical. Listen to cut number 4.
America, nobody can serve God and the military.
That is not true. That is simply false. Raphael Warnock is wrong, and more than wrong. It's deeply disrespectful of everyone in the uniform and the families that support them. Georgia, do not vote for Raphael Warnock. Georgia, do not vote for John Ossoff. John Ossoff wants to persecute people. Cut number 2.
We need to send a message this year. We need to send a message that if you indulge this kind of politics, you're not just going to get beaten. You're going to get beaten so bad you can never run or show your face again in public. Because we have had enough.
You can never show your face again in public if you support a Donald Trump or David Perdue or Kelly Loeffler. That's John Ossoff, 33-year-old do-nothing wonder, akin empty suit. Georgia, you can vote early today, tomorrow, and Thursday. Get out there and do it. Go to davidperdue.com or PerdueForSenate.com or Google where do I vote early in Georgia, and you will find out. Go and vote today, please. Now, ReliefFactor.com time. It rained in California. It may never rain in California, but when rain, it pours. Boy, did it pour up. 1.5 inches in Orange County yesterday. So nobody went outside. No, not even the water snakes went outside yesterday. But today is the day. There's snow on the mountains. ReliefFactor.com. It's the day. Got my lukewarm coffee here. All right, I'll take my Relief Factor. And now I am fully equipped. It's like Popeye and spinach, Hugh Hewitt and Relief Factor. And all you need to do is take it every day, and you will feel great. And you will exercise more. And look, we got 3 to 4 more months of social distancing, 3 to 4 more months of more time alone, 3 to 4 more months of you being able to get out there and exercise on your own schedule, because you can tell everyone, I'm not going out, I'm COVID careful. 3 to 4 more months to get into shape. Do it with the help of ReliefFactor.com. Support for the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that plague you when you do exercise. Don't let them deter you. Take ReliefFactor.com. Coming right back, America. Don't go anywhere. David Drucker fills us in on what's going on in Georgia next on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
What do you make of a city like Minneapolis, Minnesota, that slashed the police budget by millions of dollars last night. It was a unanimous vote. These kooks originally voted to abolish the police department altogether. I'm going to give you some numbers, because this is very real here in Georgia, too. How pro-police do you think Raphael Warnock is? How pro-police do you think John Ossoff is? How pro-police do you think today's Democrats are? In Minneapolis, where we have a lot of listeners, here are some numbers that I want to share with you. There have been 532 gunshot victims so far this year. 532. More than double the same period a year ago. Carjackings are up 331% from the same period last year. They've had hundreds of carjackings in the streets of Minneapolis. Violent crimes have surged to 5,100 crimes. And what did Minneapolis City Council do? Unanimously voted to slash the Minneapolis Police Department's budget by $8 million. Supposedly, they'll take the money and funnel it to other city services, including mental health teams and violence prevention programs, as they try to, quote, transform police.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So what happened back in 2018 is Brian Kemp, who made all these wonderful promises about being this rock star conservative. We've aired his ridiculous advertisement many times here on this program. And he takes office. Stacey Abrams never concedes. Now, she never conceded, not out of vanity, because that's how we mocked her. But instead, she was up to something else. She was up to a legal claim and a challenge to change the Georgia voter rolls. So she got advice from some very wise and capable lawyers who told her, do not concede under any circumstances whatsoever, similar to kind of what Hillary Clinton said. We're going to go raise tens of millions of dollars for you to go sue Kemp and Raffensperger. Now, the lawsuit was pretty well put together. The lawsuit, because Stacey Abrams had a lot of money and a lot of time, detailed real human beings that submitted real ballots.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined by David Drucker of the Washington Examiner. Follow him on Twitter at David M. Drucker. David, all eyes are on Georgia. I'm urging everybody to do two things this week, which is to give to Angel Tree, the banner of which is at the top of HughHewitt.com. Get your tax-deductible contribution in to Prison Fellowship today. And to vote today in Georgia. I got 13 affiliates down there. What do you make of the Georgia race based on the data you've seen?
I mean, Hugh, I'm not totally sure what to make of it. I mean, we've seen early voting or ballot requests. We've seen early voting numbers that suggest a general election type turnout, right? Usually you don't see that in a runoff election that's after a general election in particular, right? This is going to happen really, I mean, I guess you could say right after the holiday season, but it's never the end of the holiday season until the national championship for college football happens. And so this is happening sort of as people are slightly checked out, yet everybody is super engaged. The advertising, the work on the ground for voter turnout. So it's like you've got this mini presidential election going on. But one of the things we've learned about, early voting statistics, and it's why I didn't pay as much attention to it in the November 3rd election, is you're never quite sure who the people are actually voting for. And so, it's where I'm hesitant to say this is what I'm seeing based on what the data is. So my kind of default here is it's a very close election. It could turn out that one candidate or another wins by a greater margin that's not close. But I would still bet on something that's pretty tight. And while I've given Republicans the edge and continue to give them the edge generally, I don't think this is the kind of thing where you could say that it's definitive, because Georgia is a purple state and it is evolving. It's an evolution that has been going on, and we saw a big piece of that on November 3rd with David Perdue coming very close to 50% and winning the Senate race, but Joe Biden very narrowly winning the presidential race.
No, I've got 13 affiliates in Georgia, David, and AM 920, The Answer in Atlanta, is the highest ranked talk show in the morning. There are new talk shows and there are music stations that have more listeners, but this show is listened to more than any other news talker in Atlanta, more than any talk show in Atlanta during 6 to 9 a.m. And I've been urging everyone to early vote, and in fact, more than 2 million people, probably went up yesterday, we don't have the numbers, have voted, including 64,000 people who did not vote in November, which is a curveball, right? I don't know how that, yeah. I don't know what that means. That could mean great news for the Republicans. I think it does, because I believe that the Democrats maxed out their registration and turnout effort, and they're going to struggle to reproduce that. But that could be bias confirmation thinking. What do you think about those 64,000 people?
Well, it depends on where they are. I mean, I know that there could have been more votes cast by African Americans November 3rd than there were. I also know that they continue to deploy the president to areas of the state that are heavily conservative, but did not do as well on November 3rd than they would have liked. Right. So the next place he's going the day before the election is Valdosta, I believe, or it's Northwest Georgia. So
Dalton. He's going to Dalton, Georgia.
Dalton. Excuse me. Valdosta is where he went first.
Yep.
So I got the Northwest part, right? And so these are areas that they're still looking to squeeze out and motivate votes in areas that are there. They're not going to places that, let's go here and expand the tent, or let's go here and up our numbers to really juice the thing, right? They're going where they need people to show up or they're in trouble.
It's a laboratory too, David.
They are in trouble. All it means is I just think this thing is close, and I don't think we could make too many assumptions.
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't think it's close. I'm not trusting any polling. They don't know what they're doing. I believe that some people in November were exhausted by President Trump, and all of those people who voted for Trump are coming out, Lynn Wood and the Kraken notwithstanding. They're all going to come out and vote for Trump, and they're going to vote for David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. I feel pretty good about this because we've won the ad war in terms of total spending. There isn't, as far as I know, there isn't a dime of advertising space left anywhere in Georgia. They can buy more Facebook ads, but I mean, it's a laboratory. This is an experiment in saturation bombing of messaging.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think it's the first saturation we've seen. I think what's important in any of these contests is that you're not significantly outspent and that you spend what you need. What we learned from a lot of the Senate races this year and even some other races is money's not going to buy you a victory, but you can't get overwhelmed. And clearly nobody's going to get overwhelmed here. The Republicans
that's it. That's a great lesson. You cannot be overwhelmed, and that is not happening. But boy, oh boy, my friend Glenn sitting there in Atlanta, he's getting TikTok ads or things sent. I mean, it's down to that level of micro aggressions against voters.
I know. And they're knocking on doors. And it's just an all-out political sort of ad war, but also a voter turnout war, right? I mean, it's Georgia, so people are going door to door. The Democrats are going door to door.
It's a great race. I think Perdue and Loeffler are going to win comfortably, but get out and vote, Georgia, so I'm not a liar. Get out and vote today. David Drucker, thank you. Georgia, go Google, where do I vote in Georgia? You'll find out. Do not wait till next week. You could have an ice storm next week, and Atlanta doesn't do well with ice storms. Get out there and vote today. I'll be right back. Hour 2 of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Michael Eric Dyson in Hour 3 today. Stay tuned.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Let's listen to Nicole Wallace, not just on the president, but on all Republicans. Video cut 11.
I think Republicans are concerned that there just might be a little shame injected into the political system again. Under Donald Trump, they could let people go without unemployment insurance because Donald Trump didn't care. Under Donald Trump, they could let people end up in food bank lines because he didn't care about programs to secure their... A lot of people have temporary economic crises that will be alleviated if we kill the virus and people can open up their businesses again. But Republicans don't feel pressure because of the suffering, because people have been suffering for many, many, many months. Republicans are afraid that we might reintroduce shame into the political ecosystem. And I think that what I detect in McConnell is relief. I don't think McConnell liked working with Donald Trump. I think he was craven enough to know that he could put whatever judges he wanted on the United States Supreme Court, just call Trump again and say, hey, do Gorsuch, do Kavanaugh next, and let's do a Hail Mary with the real right-wing lunatic. I mean, I don't think that Mitch McConnell has any distress or despair about working with Joe Biden.
That was Michael Steele, wasn't it? Chortling along. Mike, that was Michael Steele. This is incredible. They're lecturing us about shame, and the former chairman of the RNC is chortling along about that deranged woman's attack on all Republicans who said for months and months and months the president didn't care. You mean specifically the 5 months that Nancy has blocked the COVID relief package? Those 5 months, Nicole Wallace?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
We're living in some weird times, my friend. What do you make of what we're going through as a nation, and where do you see us going from here?
Well, you're absolutely right. In the 40 years that I've been involved in American politics, starting with President Richard Nixon through 3 campaigns for President Ronald Reagan, my service for Senator Bob Dole, truly great American, a great American war hero and patriot, my service for Donald Trump, I've never seen anything quite like this. The media has always had a left-wing lean, a left-wing bias. It was sometimes outrageous, but you could sometimes also find balanced and responsible reporting. Those days are over forever. The news media now has no obligation to report accurately or factually. It's all become opinion-based, and it's pretty vicious. We've never seen this level of censorship of all mass communications in the United States. It's not just broadcast television, cable television, the one exception being radio, but it's also internet-based. It's totally social media-based. So if you don't agree with the conventional political narrative as being put forward by the establishment, well, then you don't get to argue, you get to be silenced, creating an atmosphere in which I have to wonder whether any judge will have the courage to do what's right and call out the fraud in this election.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The only way the Supreme Court, the other courts would hear this is if there was blatant, in-your-face evidence of massive, massive fraud that could not be refuted. And that's somebody from Dominion, somebody standing there and saying, I designed it so it can do this. Here are the guys that did it. Here's the way we've done it. You get something like that, we have a different conversation. But all of these allegations, remember, everybody's going to have another story. There are, I understand, 1,000 affidavits, and I'm sure many of them are people that have observed something very, very shocking and very sincere. But when you ask the other people who allegedly did whatever they did, they're going to have a story. They're going to have a defense. They're going to have a claim. Now, if Sidney Powell is right, that she has evidence that the voting machines were manipulated, I just find it jaw-dropping that the Donald Trump people have not made that allegation. They've not made it. Why? Isn't that the strongest allegation? That the voting machines were manipulated so that votes all of a sudden were counted more for Biden and less for Trump? As opposed to individual allegations of shenanigans when there are always allegations of shenanigans, always. Every close election. People are just paying more attention now. So the salvation will be for Donald Trump through Congress, and that will only happen if enough senators, as John Eastman, his lawyer, said to me, if enough senators believe there is ample evidence in their view that this was stolen. He says it depends on the quality of the evidence, and it's still being gathered right now as we speak, I guess.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Let me understand. You have some sympathy for Georgia voters, Georgia Republicans who won't be voting.
Yeah, I do have sympathy. I can't say for sure that that's what I would do if I was faced with that choice, Dennis. But I think I understand why they feel that way, and I don't believe that it's purely emotional, like you're saying.
It's not only emotional; it is destructive and contemptible. I have contempt for any Republican in Georgia who doesn't vote on January 5th. They are ruining America. Okay. They have no excuse. Dennis, I have contempt for them. Okay,
if we sit down to play a game together, and I cheat, and I keep winning by cheating, is it contemptible for you to quit playing with me?
Really? Do you have a Republican governor in Texas?
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of.
Kind of, fine. Yeah, okay. Do they have a Republican governor in Florida? How did any Republicans win? Are you telling me that everywhere that there is an election now, there is no chance of a Republican winning?
I'm saying anytime the Democrats want to flip their switch, they know how to flip it now, and there's not a whole lot of fun.
So if you believe that, then every Republican should boycott the election and allow two Democrats to get the majority for the Democrats in the Senate, right? Be consistent. Why should anyone vote? Why should one Republican vote?
That is precisely what they're saying. And
I know it's what they're saying, and they're fools, okay? They're fools. They should monitor the elections to the best of their ability. They should video everything. Everything should be as...
Morning, Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. It's Hugh Hewitt. Joined now by Byron York. You see him on Fox News. Of course, he works for the Washington Examiner, where he pens his brilliant column. Good morning, Byron. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and are enjoying a peaceful start or end to 2020, which has been anything but peaceful.
Good morning, Hugh, and the same to you.
Thank you. What does Mitch McConnell do? And to set it up for the Steelers fans out there, the House passed, the Senate passed, the president eventually signed $900 billion in relief, but he asked for $2,000 checks with another $464 billion. Nancy Pelosi jumped on it, had it passed yesterday. Now it's in the Senate. What does Mitch McConnell do with that?
I don't know. I mean, I think he's got to have a vote on it at some point. You can make an argument that for $2,000. You can make an argument that $600 was not enough. But you could have made that argument in the summertime. You could have made that argument in the fall. You could have made that argument any time before the bill with $600 actually passed. But the president didn't do that. As a matter of fact, I don't know why he didn't do it during the campaign. I mean, that's kind of a traditional way of buying votes, promising people more money than the other guy. But he didn't do it. So now you did see the House Democrats jump on this thing, and procedurally it took them a few days to do it, but they passed this bill now. And so Mitch McConnell can either just try to sit on it and make sure it never ever comes to a vote, because he has two senators, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, who are coming up for a big election in next week, or he can make them vote on it.
Well, the good news is Bernie Sanders is going to help us here, because Bernie is going to filibuster the NDAA override, a veto override. So he's going to eat up the clock. And while he is filibustering, Mitch doesn't have to do anything. And it's my gut that they don't want to pass this, that if you're going to spend another $464 billion, you target it to businesses like restaurants, which have closed, and to entrepreneurs who have been shuttered by the government. And you do not just, shotgun money, and you actually go find people who've been out of work. You extend unemployment. There are better ways to spend it than shotgunning money. But Bernie's going to give him cover. I'd let him talk for 3 days. Honestly, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Well, he is. Obviously, and the NDAA thing is another thing. The NDAA passed with 335 votes in the House originally, and with 84 votes in the Senate, and the president vetoes it. Obviously, the House has now overridden it, and it again going to the Senate where it got 84 votes. What's its prospects there? So the president's been doing some odd things as far as Congress is concerned the last few days.
Now, in terms of the NDA, I've got Admiral Stavridis coming up. It is the annual, again, we got to break this down for Steelers fans, Byron. It allows the Pentagon to operate with certainty as to what its goals and missions are. It's not an appropriation. It's just the categories into which money can flow. And it has gone from a 500-page bill to a 5,000-page bill. One of its critics told me it's just completely out of control. Everyone stuffs everything into the NDAA because you have to pass it. It's a must-pass bill, like the budget. Right. And I think you see some of the no votes coming from people who say the NDAA is supposed to give the Pentagon flexibility and guidance, not micromanage it. Nevertheless, it will pass. It will be overridden. But we want that to be slow. And I think Mitch schedules a vote on the the $2,000 checks a week from Thursday, after the Tuesday vote in Georgia, and Kelly and David Perdue say we're voting for it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that work?
It does work. And look, the president's veto is not unprecedented. You've seen coverage, suggesting that NDAAs are never vetoed. In fact, they've been vetoed a fair amount. Carter did it, Reagan did it, Clinton did it, Bush 2 did it, and Obama did it, and now Trump has done it. So, this has happened precisely because people throw stuff into must-pass bills. Now, switching back to the virus relief in the spending bill, this was the absolute worst of Washington. This is people seeing the absolute worst of Washington, which is the Congress, mostly in the person of Nancy Pelosi, refusing to act on something that was actually needed by the American people, which is more financial relief to deal with the lockdowns. Refusing to act on it because it might give the president an edge in the election. Then after the election, throwing it together, throwing everything in it, a bill of nearly 6,000 pages in length, and then giving their own lawmakers a couple of hours to look it over before voting. So, the president has every reason to be angry about that. Every American has every reason to be angry about that. It's just that the way he has dealt with it, strategic or tactically, has been pretty poor.
Yeah, my whole take on this, Byron, and I want to get on to the COVID vaccination rollout. I do want your take on this. whatever Trump does this month is being overanalyzed like everything else that Trump does. And in 4 years, if he runs again, it will not matter. I saw someone, I think Pat Toomey, saying he's going to be remembered for being erratic. Yeah, it bothers some people this month, but it's that Trumpism has got nothing to do with any individual action. It's a general disgust of the sort you just articulated. Do you agree that this is all background noise in 4 years?
Well, first of all, I agree that Trump has a list of accomplishments, deregulation, the buildup of the military,
judges,
judicial appointments. I mean, he has a list of accomplishments that, frankly, exceed any other Republican president since Reagan. And those will be what's remembered rather than the day-to-day controversy. I also think, by the way, I have argued for a couple of years that Joe Biden at 78 is too old to be president. I mean, we could see this coming, and I think I first wrote about it a couple of years ago. And Donald Trump would be 78 4 years from now. He'd be too old to be president. I mean, this is a bizarre situation we've found ourselves in with the entire leadership of our government almost in their 80s or approaching their 80s.
It's nuts.
So I think
it's
that's
nuts.
going to change.
So my last question to you is, the virus vaccination is bollocksed up because it's not the federal government, it's not the state government, it's local governments control distribution. And I just have tweeted out the Orange County, California guidance, which isn't guidance. It's actually a pay-in to social engineering of a task force of 40 people that represent everybody. It's just make sure nobody yells at us because we're not represented. It doesn't actually have any guidance. It doesn't have any rollout. I had a doctor call from Pittsburgh. Now, this is a county-by-county thing, and in 48 states, they're called counties. In Louisiana, they're called parishes. In Pennsylvania, they're called covens. And in these various local governments, there is just a collapse of common sense, Byron. Are you following this?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we've seen from months before the virus was actually finished. We've seen mostly Democrats express concerns about equity in the distribution of the virus. And you saw, for example, Joe Biden in his transition create a task force for this very thing. And, I mean, the argument over who actually should get the virus first, it seems to me one way to look at it is you look at who's dying from the virus the most, which is the elderly, and you give it to them. But that's not the way it's worked.
It's so easy. Frontline workers followed by 75 years and older, followed by 70 years and older, followed by 60 years and older. And if you've got a special case like dialysis patients, you get a note from your doctor and you go to the front of the line. It's not really hard.
It's not hard. But look, there are racial disparities in the virus. There's no doubt black people died in significantly larger numbers than white people from this virus.
That's absolutely true. I have Dr. Dyson on next hour. But I mean, then you set up your vaccine centers in demographically underserved areas. It's just not that hard.
No, it's not. But it was never going to be simple. And if you give it to, how many counties are in this country? I should know.
3,000.
A lot.
3,000. I think about 150 of the covens are in Pennsylvania, but other than that.
Well, if you give it to 3,000 jurisdictions, you're going to get a lot of disparities.
I just think that the whole equity issue lost its guidance. It's not equity on committees; it's equity in receipt, and that is they bollocks this up, Byron. It's just when federal politics become local politics. Is anyone at the Examiner following this closely?
Yeah, we have a reporter who's actually covering this very rollout, but also the speed of it. I mean, they've only gotten about 1 million out now.
2 million.
Why didn't they have more by now?
I know. There are 10 million doses on the street, 11 million actually, 2 million administered, and it's a local government issue. It is not Trump. It is not your governor. It's your local government. Byron York, follow him on Twitter at Byron York. Follow him at the Washington Examiner. Watch him on Fox News. Talk to you next week, friends. Stay tuned, America. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lan-Hee Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Listen to what Joe Biden said about the actions like the one we saw last night in Minneapolis to literally defund the police.
But I also don't think we should get too far ahead of ourselves on dealing with police reform in that, because they've already labeled us as being defund the police. Anything we put forward in terms of the organizational structure to change policing, which I promise you will occur, promise you. Just think to yourself and give me advice whether we should do that before January 5th, because that's how they beat the living hell out of us across the country, saying that we're talking about defunding the police. We're not. We're talking about holding them accountable.
Nothing screams holding them accountable better than stripping $8 million from the police department in Minneapolis, which, of course, will result in... Here's how this works. If you don't have funds for the police, if you funnel them into, mental health counselors, and good luck handling a raging, violent criminal, good luck with that if you're a mental health counselor. Maybe you can sit there and start singing folk music to somebody who's, waving a machete around. Maybe you could go back and ask them if they wet the bed when they were a child as they're, on a rampage. Oh, we're not. But this is a very important clip from Biden. You've got to know exactly his intention.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
If I was a judge in Georgia, I would have been sympathetic to Stacey Abrams' case. Meanwhile, you have the best lawyers in the country arguing fervently. And in opposition, Raffensperger and Kemp that do not know how to fight. They don't have the spine to fight. They don't have the wherewithal to fight. They do not want it. So they got scared. All of a sudden, Stacey Abrams started to call about criminal referrals. She talked about how she's going to get the Department of Justice involved, even though there was nothing to get the DOJ involved. But if you want to mobilize the DOJ, just scream racism and the DOJ gets deployed like the 101st Airborne. You've never seen anything like it. You scream racism, they show up to Bubba Wallace's garage to tell us that a rope is obviously was not put there by the KKK lynch mob. So Kemp and Raffensperger started to get nervous. Kemp and Raffensperger then settled with Stacey Abrams. They settled. Now, this is unconstitutional. And by settling, part of what Stacey Abrams was asking for was a relaxing of the signature requirements, absentee ballots, drop-off requirements, all sorts of things that seemed just to be procedural changes.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt. Down in Georgia, voting is underway, and I am confident David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler are winning. Kelly Loeffler going on Fox and Friends this morning. David Perdue on this show yesterday. They are playing an NFL version prevent defense. They are ahead comfortably. I think Democrats have actually given up and are not even talking about it. And going for Hail Mary passes like this $2,000 bill. I just feel good. But nevertheless, Republicans and independents and Democrats who are not left-wing radicals, get out and vote. Get out and vote today and tomorrow when you can. Coming up next hour, by the way, I'm talking with Michael Eric Dyson, Professor Dyson, Dr. Dyson, joining me to talk about this brand new book, Long Time Coming. His new bestseller on race in America in 2020. As we crest into 2021, be a great conversation. Don't miss it. Time for AndrewandTodd.com, sponsored business story of the day. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian, friends of mine for 20 and 12 years respectively, or 20 and 9 years respectively. I want to be accurate. AndrewandTodd.com are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They lend you money to buy houses, refinance houses, get veterans into houses, have old people get reverse mortgages, help your son or daughter, grandson or granddaughter get into a house during these incredibly low interest rates because they are not going to last. They cannot last at this level. They have never been at this level before. Ever since the vaccine arrived, the 10-year Treasury's been under 1. You know, I used to think a 4% 10-year Treasury and a 5.5% mortgage was something worth having. Guess what? The 10-year Treasury is at 0.93. Interest rates on home purchases can be in the 2s. They're more often than not in the low 3s. And you've got to refinance now. It's just like cheapest money ever. But to get started, call Andrew and Todd at 888-888-1172. Everyone can remember that number, 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. AndrewandTodd.com. The business story of the day is not yesterday. Dow went up 204 yesterday. NASDAQ went up 94, and the S&P went up 32. And in Great Britain today, Brexit is ratified and voted through by Parliament, and their market is up 2%. And I think it's going to be another big day. The business story of the day, I read it already in the first hour, is this Financial Times story on Amazon. Now, I always disclose I own Amazon because I only own one stock at a time. I owned Apple for years, and I sold Apple and bought Amazon a few years ago, and it's done very well. But mostly I own other assets, especially mutual funds, because I am not a market specialist. I just like to have one stock at a time to follow and read stories. And I got lucky because I actually follow the old adage of own what you use, and I use Amazon. And I used to just buy books at Amazon. Now we buy everything from Amazon, from food to clothing, everything from Amazon. And Amazon got into the advertising business a few years ago. And incredibly, they're going to make $21 billion in advertising this year, according to the Financial Times. They're going to have their first $100 billion quarter. And they are catching up to Google quickly. Google's got no antitrust problems. They owe Amazon. And so it's just going to be an extraordinary thing. So Amazon this morning or yesterday closed at $3,283 a share, up $111. Now, I am not a stock picker. I'm not an analyst. I do not hold myself out. I think it's a $5,000 stock. And I think it's going to go to $5,000. That might take a year. Might take a year and a half. Might take 2 years. But, you know, if you're investing, invest for the long haul. And don't try and pick some start. You're not that smart. I'm not that smart. People don't know what works. I do know that refinancing your house when it's a 3% 30-year as opposed to a 5% 30-year is a smart thing to do. And you should do that at AndrewandTodd.com. AndrewandTodd.com. Come right back. Looking forward to talking to Admiral James Stavridis right after the break here on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship. Click on the Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lan Hee Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
The fact is, our elections are supposed to be free and fair. Why is it a fringe point of view? I think most patriots feel the way that I do, that that's simply unacceptable. It's so un-American. You've got to stop everything and do whatever it takes to right that wrong.
If the forces of evil, the forces of the establishment, were prepared to use both simple voter fraud plus cyber manipulation of the vote to steal this election, what's to stop them from doing so in the runoff in Georgia, which will take place January 5th and determine control of the Senate? What is to stop them from rigging the election using the same techniques and programs 4 years from now? That's why it's essential we fight this out. If we are unsuccessful in absolutely proving the fraud and the illegitimacy and the cyber manipulation of the 2020 election, what are the chances of our ever getting another fair election again? So if Joe Biden should unfortunately become president fraudulently, and if he pursues his policies on COVID-19 and taxes and regulation and trade and a myriad of other issues, by the end of his first year, he will make Herbert Hoover look popular. The country's economy will crash. It's indisputable. High taxes, more regulation, more government control, COVID-19 shutdowns will decimate the economy.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The argument the president is making is that because so many laws were violated, so many time periods were violated, therefore enough fraudulent votes were filed so that it would overturn the margin of victory for Joe Biden in enough states to prevent Joe Biden from becoming president. Do I believe that that's going to work? No. Not because it's not credible, because I don't really know. I've just read the brief by Peter Navarro, which I thought was pretty persuasive. I've heard the denials by Dominion, and Dominion has filed a defamation lawsuit against Sidney Powell and others, including Rudy Giuliani. That's going to be very serious. And assuming the lawsuits are not thrown out, there will be discovery, and we're going to really have to have a real discussion and exchange over what happened. It won't be enough to overturn the election, but maybe we can get down to exactly what happened, because truth is a complete defense in defamation. And if Sidney Powell has the truth and she's being sued, she's going to win, plaintiff's going to lose. So we'll find out. I do know this. Hillary told Joe Biden not to concede under any circumstances. And as I've talked about the last couple of days, in January 2017, when a man named Donald John Trump was president or president-elect, there were 7 House Democrats, 7, who challenged the electors and said he was elected fraudulently because of Russian interference, and said there'd been voting machine manipulation and malfunction. Is this thing on?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
They're not going to wake
I
up.
didn't say just the rhinos. I said the rhinos and the milquetoast Republicans.
Fine, the rhinos and the
Roy Blunt, who
right.
won't fight for anything.
Yeah. So that'll really work. That'll really work. That'll do it. Here, give the Senate to the Democrats. That'll wake you up.
Or just keep playing the game and keep getting made a fool of.
Okay, that's pure. It's an emotional response. There's nothing I could say.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt. That music means I'm joined by Admiral James Stavridis, retired, formerly head of NATO, the Allied Supreme Commander there, formerly head of United States Southern Command, now in Florida as I'm in California awaiting a vaccine and a return to D.C. Good morning, Admiral. I hope you had a great Christmas. Looking forward to a great New Year.
I did indeed, Hugh. And my good news of the day is I have two son-in-laws who are both frontline physicians treating COVID on a daily basis, and a daughter who's a nurse practitioner, same frontline COVID. All three of them have now gotten their shots. So
that is great news. Let me ask you, Admiral, I think local governments are bollocksed up on this beyond frontline. They got too many committees and not enough action. And I'm jumping the order of sequence. I was going to do stories, but I'm going to jump to it. You've run a lot of complex organizations. There are 3,000 counties in 48 states. They're called parishes in Louisiana and covens in Pennsylvania. So 50 states with 3,000 units distributing this. How ought they to organize distribution so that it is simple, direct, clear, and effective?
Well, you've described very well both the beauty and the tragedy of the American federal system, right? What makes us special, if you will, as a democracy is that we put an awful lot of authority and power in the states, in the counties, in the municipalities. When it comes to a big, huge national effort, we are somewhat disadvantaged. So here's what I'd recommend. I would start by saying this is a big national event and use some of the authorities that the executive branch has, not to completely override our wonderful governors or to crush these fine citizens in each of 3,000 counties, but to say, here are the national guidelines and you are going to follow them. And I think that would probably barf up a series of court cases. Probably not as many as you want and as many as you would think. And my guess, Hugh, is that a lot of these local authorities aren't relishing the opportunity to sit around and figure this out. They'd probably rather be able to say, oops, the federal government says we got to go in this order. Last thought, again, back to the beauty and the tragedy. The real answer to this is called a national health service. That's what Great Britain has. I don't think that's what we want here. I know that's not what you want here. I think we want a system that allows personal choice. You got to kind of take some of the difficulties that come along with the beauty of that individualism.
Yeah, what I'm thinking of, Admiral, is that William Simon was my first boss at the Nixon Library in 1989, chairman of the foundation, and he always said "kiss" in every conversation. Keep it simple, stupid. And I went in looking for the Orange County, California guidance, and instead of guidance on where and when vaccines would be available and in what order, I found a description of many pages about the task force that is deciding the guidance. And it's got 40 different people representing every community. It's all about inclusion, and I understand why in this year. I'm talking with Michael Eric Dyson about that next hour. But honestly, this is not hard, but there are no directions for people. And I wonder, in your county, in Florida, have you seen a plan yet that goes beyond doctors getting, and frontline nurses and respiratory therapists and dialysis technicians? Have you seen a plan?
I have not, and I am hoping to see one fairly soon. Again, back to Great Britain and the national healthcare system, the way they approached it was simple chronology. They simply said, who's the oldest person? And they're working their way down that list. I think there are some exceptions that can be appealed to a specific board or two. Again, we're just not going to get there. I like the KISS principle. I think the easiest way to apply it here is, in fact, a federal mandate. And again, this draws us into an exciting discussion about should there be a national mask wearing policy. Again, pros and cons here. I think this is a big national level emergency, and I think we ought to have a federal set of guidelines that the states and the counties ought to have to follow.
I agree. It would make it easier. We wouldn't have task force in every county then. Let me switch to the other issue. Yesterday, President Trump issued an executive order that prohibited U.S. investors and pension funds from and ETF and index funds from investing in companies that are Chinese Communist military controlled. Now, I like that. And I think every single retirement system in America ought to follow that. And I think that the Treasury ought to publish a list of those companies. And I'm beginning to think, you remember Cato the Elder Admiral, he closed every speech in the 230s BC with Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. I think we need the Latin equivalent of the CCP must be contained. I don't want to go to war with the CCP, but I really do believe, and the front page of the Wall Street Journal today is about how the world has figured out they are not a benevolent force. They're not even a neutral force. They're a dangerous force. And it's an all hands on deck situation vis-a-vis the CCP, or am I overstating it in your view?
No, you are not overstating it. And I've touched this in my business life in a couple of places. And I will tell you that the Chinese Communist Party is, in fact, an enormous malign actor that runs businesses. And I suspect a lot of listeners don't really appreciate that. I mean, picture the Pentagon running a side business that owned not just even military and defense companies, which would be anathema in our system, but also owns companies that make shoes, that make cereal, that purify water, supposedly. This is really pernicious. And it's a way of putting money in the pockets of the senior military, so the senior military remain loyal to the regime. It's a rotten system from top to bottom, and it's the opposite of what we have here, where our military is resolutely apolitical and not paid very much money, and that's fine because that's the price you pay for the right to serve, as we say in the United States military. So what we ought to be doing is exactly what you described. We ought to be revealing the exact extent of this. And that means, not, in my view, not only publishing a list of companies that the CCP actually owns, show how it's linked together, show how the funding flows from the profits of these companies into the pockets of these generals, show how those dollars specifically go into programs that undermine U.S. defense interests around the world. They're funding the responses to the freedom of navigation patrols we are rightfully running in the South China Sea to preserve those as international waters. So step one is reveal. Step two, as you describe, is to sanction and lay out the case for doing so. And the Chinese are a learning organism as a state. They will discover that they want to continue to do business. And as I always say about the relationship with China, I'll stop here, we want to bend it, but we want to be careful we don't break it and end up in a war. And a good way to start bending it is put economic pressure on these military-aligned companies.
That's an excellent way. You described it very well. I would add to that description, imagine if the Pentagon owned Facebook. That's actually what we've got with some of these companies. And we've just got to reveal and then restore integrity. So, Admiral, last question. I think General Austin will get his waiver. From what I understand, I think he'll get his waiver, though there will be some pretty principled opposition, not to the man, but to the idea. Have you gotten any other sense of who else is staffing up the Pentagon and the State Department out of Team Biden? Has the president-elect shown his hand?
Not in a public way. I think that a good place to start, if you want to kind of analyze that, is look at the so-called members of the landing teams. These are the designated officials from the transition, the Office of the Transition of the President-elect, who are authorized to go to the Pentagon and sit with their counterparts in the organizational structure. So at the top of that is an extremely competent, capable woman, Dr. Kathleen Hicks, Kath Hicks. She works at CSIS. She's the daughter of a Navy retired nuclear submariner. I know her extremely well. She was Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense in the Obama administration for strategy. She has a very wide worldview. She's got about 20 people on this landing team, and they are in there talking to their counterparts. I suspect some number of that waterfall of 20 people will end up going into the Pentagon at a pretty high level. But I think that the Biden team is correctly in the, ankle bone connected to knee bone phase here, meaning let's get General Austin confirmed. Then we'll figure out who exactly is going to be where in the building. But right now, look at that landing team. That's a pretty good sense of the individuals.
Admiral Stavridis, always a pleasure. I hope to look forward to talking to you every week in the new year. If you are not absorbed into Team Biden, you'll let us know, and I hope you'll talk to us if you are at that point. But Happy New Year to you and all the Stavridi, everywhere they might be, and I'm so glad they're vaccinated, Admiral. Congratulations on that. That's a relief.
And let's get vaccines for old guys like you and me soon. Thank you, sir.
Soon, thank you. Let's also get over to HughHewitt.com. At the top of the website, there is the Angel Tree banner. I'm leaving it up for the rest of this week. And I'll tell you why. It's year-end donation time. You're running out of time. You may not have been able to help with the 41,000 children we served in the Salem Media Group. 41,000 people between Mike Gallagher and Seb Gorka and Larry Elder and Dennis Prager and myself. 41,000 people, children, got gifts because of the generosity of our audience. Thank you. Now, some of you didn't do that because you had not gotten around to financial planning. You didn't know how much money you were going to have. You didn't know how the year was going to end. And now you're making year-end donations. Well, you can do that at HughHewitt.com to Angel Tree. You can do it to Prison Fellowship via Angel Tree. You can help those children year-round with a donation right now. It's their best gift, your best gift. We are leaving it up until the end of this week because I'm still live. I'm still telling people to vote in Georgia, and I'm still telling people to go there and do that. HughHewitt.com. While you're, by the way, online, speaking of Georgia, Herman Cain, great Georgian. There is a new movie out about Herman Cain, From Poor to CEO. The life story of Herman Cain. Wonderful Georgia, wonderful guy. I did a number of events with Herman in the 2012 election cycle. The most infectious smile and laugh, the greatest personality, just the equal of any candidate. And he did very well for a while. Now, he was wedded to the crazy fair tax, but nevertheless, I loved Herman. And this movie captures him. It just does. So if you didn't get the chance to meet him like I did or work with him like I did, you get to know him from poor to CEO. All you have to do is go to salemnow.com. It'll be right there in front. Use my code HUGH, and you'll get 20% off. Don't forget as well, relieffactor.com. It is that time. I remind you, I'll do it next hour. I took it in the first hour. I'll be out and about in the highways and byways of Southern California today, trundling. Because yesterday it rained bucket. There was a NOAA event here yesterday. We got the Ark going yesterday. No walking. Could have surfed on the streets yesterday in California. But out today, walking, running, trundling, whatever. The surfers will be out there in any weather, and they need Relief Factor too. Any exercise gives you soreness in those muscle groups that need to be sore. But then you need support for the temporary relief of those minor aches and pain. Not going to heal a broken bone. It's not a wonder drug. It is simply those 4 ingredients. 4 supplements, Icarian and curcumin, resveratrol, and omega that combine to support the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that are part of your life. Please go and subscribe today. Join the tens of thousands of people who, like me, take it every day. Don't forget as well, my YouTube channel. And it's your New Year's resolution. I will put up a few videos a day that you should see, like that conversation with Admiral Stavridis, like my conversation that is coming up with Michael Eric Dyson next hour. I will put up at my YouTube channel the stuff you cannot miss. Transcripts go up at HughHewitt.com, but the videos you should watch are at YouTube. Just type in Hugh Hewitt, subscribe to the channel, you'll get them every day. And that is something that I'm going to focus on, my New Year's resolution, to make sure you see the best of the content of the Hugh Hewitt Show. And if you want everything, plus the after show, you've got to subscribe to the Universe. You go to HughHewitt.com, the Universe is right there. Subscribe to it, low monthly cost. You get the after show every evening at 8 p.m. in the East, 5 in the West, with Generalissimo preparing the next day's show prep. And me, every minute of every show of every year of the 21 years that we have been doing this, come right back.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So what happened back in 2018 is Brian Kemp, who made all these wonderful promises about being this rock star conservative. We've aired his ridiculous advertisement many times here on this program. And he takes office. Stacey Abrams never concedes. Now, she never conceded, not out of vanity, because that's how we mocked her. But instead, she was up to something else. She was up to a legal claim and a challenge to change the Georgia voter rolls. So she got advice from some very wise and capable lawyers who told her, do not concede under any circumstances whatsoever, similar to kind of what Hillary Clinton said. We're going to go raise tens of millions of dollars for you to go sue Kemp and Raffensperger. Now, the lawsuit was pretty well put together. The lawsuit, because Stacey Abrams had a lot of money and a lot of time, detailed real human beings that submitted real ballots that were rejected because the signatures were off. She found very good stories to back this up. The lawyers framed them very well, and they sued under a violation of the Civil Rights Act, or at least the Voting Rights Act, I think it's the Voting Rights Act, which is, I think, a component, or it came after of the Civil Rights Act. It was an amendment to it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Let's listen to Nicole Wallace, not just on the president, but on all Republicans. Video cut 11.
I think Republicans are concerned that there just might be a little shame injected into the political system again. Under Donald Trump, they could let people go without unemployment insurance because Donald Trump didn't care. Under Donald Trump, they could let people end up in food bank lines because he didn't care about programs to secure their. A lot of people have temporary economic crises that will be alleviated if we kill the virus and people can open up their businesses again. But Republicans don't feel pressure because of the suffering, because people have been suffering for many, many, many months. Republicans are afraid that we might reintroduce shame into the political ecosystem. And I think that what I detect in McConnell is relief. I don't think McConnell liked working with Donald Trump. I think he was craven enough to know that he could put whatever judges he wanted on the United States Supreme Court, just call Trump again and say, hey, do Gorsuch, do Kavanaugh next, and let's do a Hail Mary with the real right-wing lunatic. I mean, I don't think that Mitch McConnell has
Welcome back, America. I cannot recommend enough that you stay tuned next hour. Michael Eric Dyson joins me, professor, author, advocate, analyst, activist on race in America as we close 2020. His brand new book is Long Time Coming, Reckoning with Race in America. I'm holding it up. I have read it along with Tears We Cannot Stop. Looking forward to a great conversation with Professor Dyson. It is a blessing to have Archbishop Chaput of Philadelphia, now retired, listen to the show occasionally. Earlier in the show, I quoted Jacob Rees-Mogg on Twitter. Today is the 850th anniversary of the martyrdom of St. Thomas of Canterbury. And I riffed a little bit and said, I don't think politicians ever get sainthood. I do not believe they are often in the ranks of those to be considered for sainthood. But the Archbishop pointed out to me that St. Thomas More, who was Chancellor of England in the 1400s under Henry VIII, he is a saintly politician. So there you go. If you're a politician, St. Thomas More. Did you folks know who the patron saint of journalists is? Who I will often ask for the intercession of is Francis de Sales. And that was a revelation to me. I've been reading his wonderful book, which is available online. And if you need a great, where do I find this thing? It's available on an obscure website, and it's The Devout Life is what it's called, but it's completely online. By at ccel.org has The Devout Life. And it is now I am hardly devout, but I find this to be an amazing book. And I think it was written in 1650, I don't know for sure, but Francis de Sales is the patron saint of journalists. So the Catholics got that going over the Protestants. We got like people in our corner. There's probably a patron saint for radio producers, but that's a pretty fallen group. So I don't know if there actually is. We're not going to, I don't know if Dwayne has a patron saint. Engineers, almost certainly. Builders, almost certainly. Don't know who it is. Francis de Sales is ours. And so we're sticking with that, and we're running with that. 1-800-520-1234. Let me return one more time to our appeal to you. 41,000 children were served by this audience and the audience of Mike Gallagher, who actually had the most people respond, but that was not fair because the phone line didn't work during my show, so I have a grievance. And yes, I will have some cheese with that wine. So Mike beat me, but I didn't have a phone center. They weren't running 24/7. And so I win when the phone center is open early, but they opened their phone center at 9 because I think Gallagher did something under the table there. I think he gave him a few of his books and some Gallagher gear. But in the meantime, Michael won. And then Prager came in. Look, it doesn't matter after the silver. If it's just really what matters is the gold and the silver. And Dennis Prager and Seb Gork and Larry Elder and Eric Mate, they all did fine. Fine, great. 41,000 of you stepped up and said, I want to help Prison Fellowship through Angel Tree. And now I say, if you miss that and you say, oh, doggone it, meant to do that. I'm not supposed to slam the desk, according to Dwayne. Then if you are that person, go over to HughHewitt.com and go to the top. Go to the top. Let me close by telling you, there is a Wall Street Journal story, and I cannot emphasize how important this is. Pushback on Xi's vision for China spreads beyond U.S. Countries that once avoided upsetting Beijing are moving closer to Washington's harder stance. This may be Donald Trump's greatest legacy. It is certainly Mike Pompeo and Robert O'Brien's greatest legacy. Tom Cotton's greatest legacy of the last 4 years, clarity on the Chinese Communist Party. It is not Cold War 2.0, it's something new. The Cold War, the Soviets were on one side, we were on the other side. In this confrontation competition, the CCP is everywhere, both deceptively and openly. They are in markets, they are in Belt and Road, they are large, they are big, their economy is almost as big as ours, and it is time for clarity. Clarity, clarity. So yesterday's executive order, very, very important. I hope that they get the comptroller of the currency confirmed. I hope that they get John Barger confirmed to the Thrift Savings Board. We need people on investment boards across, and these are Democrats and Republicans, if they are clear-sighted on China. The greatest human rights abuser in the world today is the Chinese Communist Party. They are running concentration camps. They are suppressing freedom in Hong Kong. They have their eyes on Taiwan, but they are running concentration camps, not re-education centers, nothing. They're just concentration camps for Uyghurs. And they have suppressed the Roman Catholic Church via, I mean, it was really a mistake. I don't like to criticize the Holy Father on the air, but it was a giant mistake to sign the deal that he signed with the Chinese Communist Party. Naivete in the Vatican, I am not used to, but this was the most naive thing they've done, and hopefully it will be dismissed by the next Pope quickly. And the Catholic Church, the real Catholic Church, will grow in China like the evangelical church is growing in China and will not be suppressed, but they suppress religious liberty. They suppress the rights of ethnic minorities. They are bent on dominating the world in a different way than the Soviets, but be very clear-eyed about it. I may bring this up with Michael Eric Dyson. Every time we talk about race, we are not talking about the existential threat to freedom that allows racial equality to grow. Stay tuned. Michael Eric Dyson is next. Going to be a bracing conversation on this Tuesday. Don't forget to vote, Georgia. Get out and vote today. Polls are open on this Tuesday. Get out and vote today. I'll be right back with Michael Eric Dyson talking about a long time coming. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lan Hee Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
We're living in some weird times, my friend. What do you make of what we're going through as a nation, and where do you see us going from here?
Well, you're absolutely right. In the 40 years that I've been involved in American politics, starting with President Richard Nixon through 3 campaigns for President Ronald Reagan, my service for Senator Bob Dole, truly great American, a great American war hero and patriot, my service for Donald Trump, I've never seen anything quite like this. The media has always had a left-wing lean, a left-wing bias. It was sometimes outrageous, but you could sometimes also find balanced and responsible reporting. Those days are over forever. The news media now has no obligation to report accurately or factually. It's all become opinion-based, and it's pretty vicious. We've never seen this level of censorship of all mass communications in the United States. It's not just broadcast television, cable television, the one exception being radio, but it's also internet-based. It's totally social media-based. So if you don't agree with the conventional political narrative as being put forward by the establishment, well, then you don't get to argue, you get to be silenced, creating an atmosphere in which I have to wonder whether any judge will have the courage to do what's right and call out the fraud in this election.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The only way the Supreme Court, the other courts would hear this, is if there was blatant, in-your-face evidence of massive, massive fraud that could not be refuted. And that's somebody from Dominion, somebody standing there and saying, I designed it so it can do this. Here are the guys that did it. Here's the way we've done it. You get something like that, we have a different conversation. But all of these allegations, remember, everybody's going to have another story. There are, I understand, 1,000 affidavits, and I'm sure many of them are people that have observed something very, very shocking and very sincere. But when you ask the other people who allegedly did whatever they did, they're going to have a story. They're going to have a defense. They're going to have a claim. Now, if Sidney Powell is right, that she has evidence that the voting machines were manipulated, I just find it jaw-dropping that the Donald Trump people have not made that allegation. They've not made it. Why? Isn't that the strongest allegation? That the voting machines were manipulated so that votes all of a sudden were counted more for Biden and less for Trump? As opposed to individual allegations of shenanigans when there are always allegations of shenanigans, always. Every close election. People are just paying more attention now. So the salvation will be for Donald Trump through Congress, and that will only happen if enough senators, as John Eastman, his lawyer, said to me, if enough senators believe there is ample evidence in their view that this was stolen. He says it depends on the quality of the evidence, and it's still being gathered right now as we speak, I guess.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Let me understand. You have some sympathy for Georgia voters, Georgia Republicans who won't be voting.
Yeah, I do have sympathy. I can't say for sure that that's what I would do if I was faced with that choice, Dennis. But I think I understand why they feel that way, and I don't believe that it's purely emotional, like you're saying.
It's not only emotional; it is destructive and contemptible. I have contempt for any Republican in Georgia who doesn't vote on January 5th. They are ruining America. Okay. They have no excuse. Dennis, I have contempt for them. Okay,
if we sit down to play a game together, and I cheat, and I keep winning by cheating, is it contemptible for you to quit playing with me?
Really? Do you have a Republican governor in Texas?
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of.
Kind of, fine. Yeah, okay. Do they have a Republican governor in Florida? How did any Republicans win? Are you telling me that everywhere that there is an election now, there is no chance of a Republican winning?
I'm saying anytime the Democrats want to flip their switch, they know how to flip it now, and there's not a whole lot of fun.
So if you believe that, then every Republican should boycott the election and allow two Democrats to get the majority for the Democrats in the Senate, right? Be consistent. Why should anyone vote? Why should one Republican vote?
That is precisely what they're saying. And
I know it's what they're saying, and they're fools, okay? They're fools. They should monitor the elections to the best of their ability. They should video everything. Everything should be as transparent as possible. I will not give up the Senate without a fight. It's pure emotion, what you're saying.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut the very healthcare professionals and scientists whose advice he is asking Californians to follow. It makes those of us who live in California wonder who we can trust and what guidance we should be listening to. At a time when we need leadership and clarity, Newsom has given us hypocrisy and confusion. California's voters won't soon forget his shortcomings. I'm Lon Chen.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Listen to what Joe Biden said about the actions like the one we saw last night in Minneapolis to literally defund the police.
But I also don't think we should get too far ahead of ourselves on dealing with police reform in that, because they've already labeled us as being defund the police. Anything we put forward in terms of the organizational structure to change
Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to my 400 affiliates across the United States and Europe. It is great to have you on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Special hour ahead. A guest I've never had before in my 20 years of this show. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson is one of the country's most influential public intellectuals. He's a prolific author and lecturer. He is now a professor at Vanderbilt University, where he is the Distinguished University Professor of African and Diaspora Studies at the College of Arts and Science. He's also got an appointment over at the Divinity School. He's also the Centennial Professor at the university. I don't think he's doing anything but teaching. He was, I like to point out, educated at Princeton for his PhD. And before that, he had begun preaching at age 13, ordained at age 18, did his undergrad at Carson Newman. And when we went together on Meet the Press this year, I prepared for that by reading the book that he wrote last year, Tears We Cannot Stop. And then he came out with a brand new book, long time coming, Reckoning with Race in America. And I just finished reading that. And so I am deeply versed in Michael Eric Dyson writing, but I've never met him before. Dr. Dyson, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Mr. Hewitt, it's always great to hear you and listen to you, and it's an honor to be on your show, my friend.
Well, Professor, I'm glad you're here, and I really am glad you're here. We're going to spend an hour talking about these two books and about where we are at the end of 2020 and 2021, and I don't expect we're going to agree much, but I want to begin with a quote that made me stop in my tracks from Tears We Cannot Stop. On page 107, you wrote, "When I used to appear on Fox News pretty regularly with Bill O'Reilly, I begged him to say on air to a sizable audience that even though he disagreed with me, they shouldn't send me hate mail and call me the N-word. He never made that plea. His silence reinforced the racial social contract forged by angry whiteness. I'm making that plea right now. People, if you get mad at Dr. Dyson and you want to write him a letter, by all means do. But call him Dr. Dyson and pay him the respect he is due. He's a serious man. And Dr. Dyson, I am surprised Bill never did that, actually."
Yeah, I was surprised and disappointed, and I asked him, I said, look, I know we're going to battle, we're going to disagree. You're going to state your position, I'm going to state mine. We're reasonable men. But my Lord, the outcry from your audience, the downpour of venom and vitriol and racially charged rhetoric, epithets hurled against me, can we just stop? Can we just say to the people, look, you're my audience, I respect you, but don't do that. So I appreciate you saying those things, my friend.
Well, let me begin with you. I want to get into both books, especially Long Time Coming, because it's so timely. And I am very serious, and I want people to read them. I had Eddie Glaude on to talk about Begin Again. These two books, and Eddie Glaude is a beginner. And Dr. Dyson asks white America to read deeply in the outpouring of books about race in America this year, and I think that's timely and appropriate, and I have. But I want to begin to make sure people know who you are. It's an interview, not a debate at the beginning. And so I learned a lot about, I did not know you started at Cranbrook. That's Mitt Romney's school. That may be the most elite school in America. Why did you start there? Why did you leave?
Well, I was kicked out, actually. I got a scholarship out there when I was, I had to repeat the 11th grade. I was in public school and took an IQ test, scored well. Got entree into there. Judge Damon Keith, a prominent jurist who was a member of my church and a man who I respected greatly and revered as so many others did. I was dating his daughter as well at the time. And he took a great interest in me, and one thing led to another, and I got out there. But that was the first time I had ever gone to school outside of my black neighborhood, outside of my segregated black neighborhood, which meant I had never gone to school with white kids at all. And then to not have gone to school with white kids at all, to suddenly be in the number of, as you've already indicated, Mitt Romney sorts of white brothers and sisters, which meant that they were very rich, very well-heeled, very elite. It was a different situation. There was a great deal of racial animus during that time as well. I remember it was during the first showing, the original debut of Roots, the epic television show inspired by Alex Haley's book, which ironically enough I ended up writing a foreword for many years later. And during the playing of that, there were cartoons and caricatures put into the newspaper, and one of them was tacked to my door with the words, "N-word, go home." There had been a local tape made by one of the students there, white students. "We're going cigar fishing." "No, we're not. We're going N-word fishing." "What's the bait?" "How many grits?" That had been circulated around. So it was a time of tremendous racial tension. I was in a kind of what I've described as a kind of a vertigo as a result of it. Racial vertigo, because I've been thrown off, knocked off my square, so to speak, and then did poorly enough in school that I was disinvited to that particular school. I got caught up. There was a young man, a couple young white guys. We were missing our girlfriends, so we figured out how to call out on the dorm phone to our girlfriends. My girlfriend happened to be at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo. A prank that all of us received admonition for. Their parents ended up paying whatever the phone bill was. I couldn't afford it, so I had to take a third job working on the weekends. So all of that led to my feeling alienated and feeling a bit overwhelmed, and eventually got kicked out and went back to the ghetto neighborhood school and took a diploma in night school and ended up graduating, and then worked for 4 years until I went to college at 21. By that time, as you've already indicated, I accepted my call to the ministry at about 18, began to be licensed and ordained at 21, and been out there preaching and talking ever since.
You know, when you look backwards at a career, it's easy to predict success because here you are with your doctorate, and you've taught at every major university in the United States. You've lectured everywhere. You've written 20 books and bestsellers, all that stuff. But it's easy at the end of a career or at the flowering of a career, in our 60s, I like to say flowering, to predict success. But then you go down to Carson Newman in Jeff City, Tennessee, and it doesn't work out there either for you. I mean, what happened there? You actually tell that story, but I know that story, but I want the audience to hear that story.
Yes, sir. Well, I went to Carson Newman College. I started at Knoxville College, a historically black college in Knoxville, Tennessee, but they didn't have enough offerings in philosophy, and that's what I wanted to major in. And so I had taken a couple of jobs in factories, a job in a factory there in Knoxville to help support myself. As I indicated, I was an older student, 21 years old. Then I ended up pastoring 3 different churches. So I was at Carson Newman and making straight A's in philosophy. So I was doing well there academically. But I asked the responsible powers to be there, look, we have about 1 black speaker a year. You think we could get another one or maybe a couple more just to diversify things and to talk about issues that are important, not only to students of color, but it would seem to white students and others as well. And I was told rather abruptly and directly, son, there ain't, given the percentage of students here, black students here, you only deserve 1 speaker a year, and that's pretty much what you're going to get. Well, that was troubling to me. And on top of that, you had to go. There was a obligation to attend chapel every Tuesday morning. And in a sign of protest, I protested by not going to chapel. And because if you missed a couple of chapels per semester or whatever, you were in trouble. And because I protested, I was kicked out of the school. So I was kicked out of Carson Newman. I ended up pastoring full-time a church in Johnson City, Tennessee. Went there, taught for about a year. I said, look, if we're going to oppose racism, we might as well oppose sexism as well. Let's talk about ordaining 3 women as deacons of the church. So I taught a year. I'm not stupid. You just can't go in and upend ways and challenge people's theology and beliefs and moral structure of the universe. So I taught for a year, teaching from the Bible, speaking about, upholding each other as Christian citizens in the culture and in the church. And it was about to ordain 3 women. The local ministers got hold of it. One thing led to another. So I was kicked out of the church there, put out with a wife and a child, given, I think, 3 months severance pay, and told to hit the road. So I went back to Carson Newman and finished my degree thinking, well, maybe I heard God wrong. I thought I was going to end up pastoring a church. Let me go back. And I also had a strong interest in scholarship. And that's when I applied to Vanderbilt, to Princeton, and to Brown, and got in all 3 of them, visited all 3 of them, and decided to go to Princeton University, not the seminary, but the university, to study religion and to get a PhD.
When we come back from break, I'm setting up the conversation because too often guests appear and you don't know anything about their life. There's one more part of Dr. Michael Eric Dyson's life I want you to know about when we then begin talking about long time coming reckoning with race in America on the special edition at the end of 2020. Looking forward to 2021 with Dr. Dyson. Stay tuned to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The only way the Supreme Court, the other courts would hear this, is if there was blatant, in-your-face evidence of massive, massive fraud that could not be refuted. And that's somebody from Dominion, somebody standing there and saying, I designed it so it can do this. Here are the guys that did it. Here's the way we've done it. You get something like that, we have a different conversation. But all of these allegations, remember, everybody's going to have another story. There are, I understand, 1,000 affidavits, and I'm sure many of them are people that have observed something very, very shocking and very sincere. But when you ask the other people who allegedly did whatever they did, they're going to have a story. They're going to have a defense. They're going to have a claim. Now, if Sidney Powell is right, that she has evidence that the voting machines were manipulated, I just find it jaw-dropping that the Donald Trump people have not made that allegation. They've not made it. Why? Isn't that the strongest allegation? That the voting machines were manipulated so that votes all of a sudden were counted more for Biden and less for Trump? As opposed to individual allegations of shenanigans when there are always allegations of shenanigans, always. Every close election. People are just paying more attention now. So the salvation will be for Donald Trump through Congress, and that will only happen if enough senators, as John Eastman, his lawyer, said to me, if enough senators believe there is ample evidence in their view that this was stolen. He says it depends on the quality of the evidence, and it's still being gathered right now as we speak, I guess.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
Let me understand. You have some sympathy for Georgia voters, Georgia Republicans who won't be voting.
Yeah, I do have sympathy. I can't say for sure that that's what I would do if I was faced with that choice, Dennis. But I think I understand why they feel that way, and I don't believe that it's purely emotional, like you're saying.
It's not only emotional; it is destructive and contemptible. I have contempt for any Republican in Georgia who doesn't vote on January 5th. They are ruining America. Okay. They have no excuse. Dennis, I have contempt for them. Okay,
if we sit down to play a game together, and I cheat, and I keep winning by cheating, is it contemptible for you to quit playing with me?
Really? Do you have a Republican governor in Texas?
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of.
Kind of, fine. Yeah, okay. Do they have a Republican governor in Florida? How did any Republicans win? Are you telling me that everywhere that there is an election now, there is no chance of a Republican winning?
I'm saying anytime the Democrats want to flip their switch, they know how to flip it now, and there's not a whole lot of fun.
So if you believe that, then every Republican should boycott the election and allow two Democrats to get the majority for the Democrats in the Senate, right? Be consistent. Why should anyone vote? Why should one Republican vote?
That is precisely what they're saying. And
I know it's what they're saying, and they're fools, okay? They're fools. They should monitor the elections to the best of their ability. They should video everything. Everything should be as transparent as possible. I will not give up the Senate without a fight. It's pure emotion, what you're saying.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lon Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. California Governor Gavin Newsom has repeatedly called on Californians to come together and make sacrifices to fight COVID-19. The request would have been better received if, at the same time, Governor Newsom wasn't off violating his own public health guidance by dining with a group of lobbyists at one of America's most posh restaurants, or sending his kids to a Sacramento private school in person while many California schools remain closed for in-person learning and millions of students slog their way through online classes. The problem with Newsom's hypocritical actions is that they undercut
Hugh Hewitt. Music this hour. Queued Up by Michael Eric Dyson. Dr. Dyson has a new book out, long time coming, Reckoning with Race in America. He's also got an amazing book before that, Tears We Cannot Stop, which I actually would read before you read Long Time Coming. But there are musical allusions in both those books, which will be the bumper music. So, Dr. Dyson, my method is always the same with a first-time interview. Make sure the audience knows the man or the woman. There he is in your life, Everett, your brother. I believe he's dead now. And Everett passed it. He was alive in the first book, and he was dead in the second book. So it's pretty recent. And Everett, he went the other way. At the age of 27, he was tried and convicted. You write about him in both books. I believe wrongly, you say, for murder, and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. You know, we're raising money right now for Angel Tree Fellowship, which it's a top of Hugh Hewitt, which keeps prisoners connected with their family. Why did Everett go in one direction and the estimable and renowned Dr. Dyson go in another direction?
Yeah, Brother Everett, and miss him every day. He went to the Marines first. He lost his way there when my father suddenly died. And he is a junior, so he was extremely close to my father. Went AWOL from there, came back home, and ended up selling drugs in the street, doing everything that my father would have opposed fundamentally, feeling lost himself. And he and I, had conversations and said words that I would never repeat on the Hugh Hewitt show or even to you as an estimable gentleman directly, but we had very vigorous disputes about the direction of his life, back and forth. And eventually, after selling drugs in the streets, he was implicated, as you've indicated, in the murder of a gentleman. And I wasn't the kind of guy to go, oh, no, not my brother. That couldn't happen, even though I knew his character was of such a nature that even though he was selling drugs, that he certainly had never indicated in any way that he had been a murderer. But I figured, well, you're in those streets, anything could happen. So I wasn't like, oh, okay, oh, my God, you must be innocent. I'm assuming you probably were guilty until I see the evidence for myself, until I go to the trial myself and see what's going on. And long story short, it was the instance of an exception to eyewitness reports. It's what is called a dying declaration. They didn't have any physical evidence. They didn't have any, DNA evidence. They didn't have anything to implicate him. So I thought, my God, the dying declaration of a gentleman, it looks good on TV, but the experts testified, blood is running so quickly through your body. You can hallucinate. You could call your mother's name. He didn't even call my brother's name. He called it something sounding like my brother. But that was enough for an all-black jury, by the way, to convict him and send him to prison for 25 to life. And in Michigan, it's been pretty severe in regard to those sentences. So he evolved in prison. He joined an offshoot of the Muslim faith and became a minister within their tradition. And we had long debates and conversations about his life as his consciousness evolved. He never wanted to cop a plea and get out because he said that would have been an extreme lie. He didn't do what he was charged with doing, and so he wasn't going to cop a plea just to get out of prison.
So, Dr. Dyson, I've done all this just to tell people, you've had the black experience from Princeton to the penitentiary. You've had the black experience up, scholarship to Cranbrook, down, expelled. You've had the black experience, which north, south, east, west. And I think that makes it authentic. Now, I don't agree with a lot about what you write in Long Time Coming, but I mean, does anyone argue with you about authenticity?
Oh, no, absolutely not, sir. I mean, it is what it is. I've lived what I have lived and experienced what I've experienced. So I've had, a broad net to cast on the sea or the ocean, if you will, of that black experience. I don't claim it to be exhaustive, but it is authentic as much as it has occurred.
Quick exit question. We are both Christians. We both profess faith in Jesus Christ, risen and alive. Does that make us more alike than we are different? Because I'm a white and I went to Harvard. I've got a lot of privilege. Does that make us more alike or different?
Well, it depends on who we are. It could make us like in the beliefs we nurture, but the way in which we nurture them could tell tremendous stories about oppositions that have to be resolved that maybe a mere appeal to religion will not do.
Well said. I'll be right back with Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. His new book, Long Time Coming, is available now. Stay tuned.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Listen to what Joe Biden said about the actions like the one we saw last night in Minneapolis to literally defund the police.
But I also don't think we should get too far ahead of ourselves on dealing with police reform in that, because they've already labeled us as being defund the police. Anything we put forward in terms of the organizational structure to change policing, which I promise you will occur, promise you. Just think to yourself and give me advice whether we should do that before January 5th, because that's how they beat the living hell out of us across the country, saying that we're talking about defunding the police. We're not. We're talking about holding them accountable.
Nothing screams holding them accountable better than stripping $8 million from the police department in Minneapolis, which, of course, will result in... Here's how this works. If you don't have funds for the police, if you funnel them into, mental health counselors, and good luck handling a raging, violent criminal, good luck with that if you're a mental health counselor. Maybe you can sit there and start singing folk music to somebody who's, waving a machete around. Maybe you could go back and ask them if they wet the bed when they were a child as they're, on a rampage. Oh, we're not. But this is a very important clip from Biden. You've got to know exactly his intention.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
If I was a judge in Georgia, I would have been sympathetic to Stacey Abrams' case. Meanwhile, you have the best lawyers in the country arguing fervently. And in opposition, Raffensperger and Kemp that do not know how to fight. They don't have the spine to fight. They don't have the wherewithal to fight. They do not want it. So they got scared. All of a sudden, Stacey Abrams started to call about criminal referrals. She talked about how she's going to get the Department of Justice involved, even though there was nothing to get the DOJ involved. But if you want to mobilize the DOJ, just scream racism and the DOJ gets deployed like the 101st Airborne. You've never seen anything like it. You scream racism, they show up to Bubba Wallace's garage to tell us that a rope is obviously was not put there by the KKK lynch mob. So Kemp and Raffensperger started to get nervous. Kemp and Raffensperger then settled with Stacey Abrams. They settled. Now, this is unconstitutional. And by settling, part of what Stacey Abrams was asking for was a relaxing of the signature requirements, absentee ballots, drop-off requirements, all sorts of things that seemed just to be procedural changes. They seemed to be nothing more than just kind of tampering around on the edges. And Brian Kemp and Raffensperger said to themselves, we're in power. We don't want the DOJ to come after us. We don't want to start this huge thing calling us racists. And basically what happened is they said, all right, well, I guess we'll win Georgia by 3 points instead of 3.2 points.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Rachel Maddow with her latest incarnation of clickbait of the televisual variety. Video cut 10.
We haven't seen somebody leave office since Nixon, who potentially was looking down the barrel of serious prosecution for multiple felonies. And Trump CNN is reporting today that one of the people Trump's considering pardoning is not only himself, but Alan Weisselberg, who is the top financial guy at the Trump organization. I mean, if the president pardons the top financial guy at his own business on his way out of office, this is, it is worth contending anew with the threat to the republic of having a felon in the White House.
Right. Because a man whose son is in bed with communist China and who just willy-nilly emails requests for $10 million from Chinese tycoons, that's fine, right? And who are those sources who are talking to you about the pardons for members of the Trump organization? Are the same sources that sold you that we have his tax returns blockbuster that do you remember what she did? For 41 minutes.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, joined by Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. Professor Dyson is now at Vanderbilt. His academic pedigree: Chicago Theological Seminary, Brown, UNC at Chapel Hill, Columbia, DePaul, University of Pennsylvania, more recently at Georgetown, now at Vandy. It is actually without parallel, in my experience, for an academic resume. But this book, long time coming, is not academic. It is essays in grief, actually. And Dr. Dyson, my first question to you, when I read it, I had to read it with Google, because when you put letters addressed to Michael Brown, Emmett Till, Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, George Floyd, Hadia Pendleton, Sandra Bland, and Reverend Clementa Pinckney, I've got to have Google with me to remind me of facts and circumstances in every case. And I don't think that's unusual. Do you expect people to know the details of each of those cases when they sit down with long time coming?
No, I don't. I hope they will be curious enough as you are. Of course, your pedigree is more elevated than most of the folk who will read the book. Having said that, I hope they are curious enough to Google these figures, to figure out who they are, to talk about their backgrounds and why it is that I spoke about them. Some will be better known than others. Breonna Taylor, because of her recent death in tandem with George Floyd's, may be better known to people, but many of them won't be. Elijah McClain is obscured to most Americans who will read about him, regardless of color. Hadia Pendleton may be a bit more, long in the tooth in terms of a collective memory in the last 5 years for people to remember. Reverend Clementa Pinckney, they will probably know, but we'll have to find out again why it is that he would be in a book. So I welcome the curiosity and the digging deep for my reading audience, because I always want them to think for themselves.
Well, that is actually what happened. I did not know Sandra Bland's story. I'm a journalist. I'm supposed to know these things, so I know most of this stuff. I was on Faith the Nation the Sunday after the murder of Reverend Pinckney and everybody other at Mother Emanuel, so I cannot not remember that. But here's what I want to ask you about. Michael Brown, you believe, was innocent. As I researched all of the Michael Brown grand jury, Department of Justice investigations, and this is Eric Holder's Department of Justice, his killer was not charged. And whereas I am very comfortable saying George Floyd was murdered, I don't think Michael Brown was murdered. I think it's unfortunate and tragic, but I don't think so. Do you ever come down on the side of the police, ever?
Well, of course. I mean, there are many instances when those things occur that are tragic and people are guilty, and it's clear. But let me say this about the Michael Brown. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a recent documentary that came out in the last couple of years that includes a detail that's critical. Another tape emerged, but that tape wasn't widely shared, not nearly as widely shared as a video recording of Mr. Brown at a convenience store looking like he was, absconding the cigarillos from the store, taking them from the clerk there, pushing them off, and then stealing them. Another tape emerges to suggest that there had been a kind of bartering system going on, and that Mr. Brown had exchanged for a dime bag of weed, so to speak, a small amount of weed given to the clerk in exchange for that, some cigarillos. So the earlier tape suggests that he wasn't kind of stealing that he was exchanging one thing for the other. Later on, when he was accosted on the street, the eyewitness reports, yes, I've read all of the reports, both from the Justice Department, even spoken to Eric Holder, read all of the materials, and again, an unarmed young black man who was about, I think the officer was 6'4", had several reports of intimidating behavior and threatening behavior to black people. I think he that day met a guy who was as big as he was, even bigger in terms of pounds, who he was threatened by. And I think without a gun, the young man had walked away, then came back, and then he had been shot several times. And as you know, the report indicates it was not until the last shot, when he was shot at the top of his head by the officer that killed Mr. Brown, that he would have even died from his injuries. So it was tragic. It was unfortunate. The main witness has maintained the fact that he and Mike Brown had done nothing to evince or to evoke, I should say, the disrespect that was directed toward them. And so it was a more complicated situation. Again, unarmed. Whether or not he had his hands up, others say yes, some say he didn't. So I know that's a controversial argument there. At the end of the day, I just think that it could have been handled far differently than that. And men who have been far more threatening and dangerous to a police person have had that situation de-escalated and both parties live. That's what I'm arguing there.
I get it. I just wanted to point out to people, it's a traffic jam of tragedy in long time coming. And you have to work through it a case at a time with Google, and you have to have Wikipedia handy. And then the point of the book is actually not the facts and circumstances of each case. The point of the book, I think the most important line you write is, I want to quote it exactly, because page 36 of Long Time Coming. What we hear or see of race depends on who we are. And that's a rephrasing of the old and true adage, which I teach my comm law students. You see only from where you sit. And so you've got a big audience of mostly white, center-right people. I'm not as conservative as most people. I'm not as liberal as most people. I'm center-right. What do you want them to know at the end of 2020, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson? What do you want them to do?
I want them to be empathetic of others, even those with whom they disagree. There's nothing dishonest about a disagreement that's premised upon rationality, upon reflection, upon belief, upon habit, even upon community. But I want them to be open to think about the fact that had this occurred in their communities, how would they think about this? If this happened to people they loved, what would their viewpoint be? And I'm suggesting here that most black people, even in disagreement with me, would be mostly culturally conservative, morally and ethically conservative in a way that doesn't represent my particular viewpoints or identities, and yet I respect them. As a preacher, I preach to them, and with the exception of their color, might not be that different than many of the people in your audience, except their color introduces them to a different range of experiences politically that leads them down a different path, that says, look, if I sided with most of the Republicans that I maybe culturally agree with, the racial consequence of their beliefs doesn't lead them to interrogate those practices, see the racial consequence of some of their beliefs, and why it is that would be a barrier, an impediment, or an obstacle to many more black people in evolving to or engaging in the political orientation of, say, a Republican that many people who are conservative might embrace. That's a critical viewpoint that at least needs to be acknowledged.
Now, I know your answer to this, but I'm going to ask it on behalf of the audience. As I began your books, I said, look, I'm an Irish Catholic who's most of my ancestors got here in 1868 after the Civil Wars, and those that were here beforehand were from Ashtabula, Ohio, and they fought with the Union, and the terminus of the Underground Railroad was a point of pride in Ashtabula, Ohio. What in the world does this have to do with me when you write about white privilege? And, my mom didn't get to go to college. People didn't have any money in the Depression. And you answer that in the book. But for those people who are sitting out there saying, I'm not part of white comfort, I'm not part of white privilege, what do you say to them, Dr. Dyson?
Well, sir, a lot of people come to this country, weren't here when the Declaration of Independence was written, weren't here when the institutions of American society were erected, generated, and bolstered by blood, by sacrifice. But you can take advantage of those particular institutions. You don't have to have been at their origin in order to derive benefit from their existence. So when you just do a little bit of thinking there, you go, look, I don't have to be a white person who was here when slavery started or when the origin of Jim Crow occurred, and yet I could be a white person who is Irish, Italian, Polish, Jewish, Lithuanian, wherever you're from, Eastern or Western Europe, and you come to this country with a strong sense of ethnic pride, perhaps, and identification with the ethos of one's own ethnos, that is the temperature and the orientation of your particular ethnic group. You come here, it's a different story. Whiteness is something that may be foreign to many people who are white immigrants coming to this country, because whiteness is a social construct. That ain't something that you're given as a result of your birth. It's something society gives to you that makes meaningful. It makes it meaningful as a result of social interaction. So the long story short is, a lot of white folk who weren't here when stuff went down that they are maybe accused of certainly have been beneficiaries of and taken advantage of it. Look, as the great Abraham Yahshua Heschel says, the great rabbi, not all are guilty, but all are responsible. So I think many of us, when we talk about white privilege, we're not talking about rich white people going around lording it over others. You don't have to be rich and white to be a person who benefits from white privilege. Take the cops. If the cops tend in disproportionate fashion to focus on and racially profile black and brown people, you ain't got to be rich to be a white person who can take advantage of that or who has benefited from that even without intent. So white privilege has nothing to do necessarily with class at all. It has to do with the presuppositions that attend any particular race in this country.
And that is why I think white people need to read Long Time Coming, and especially Tears We Cannot Stop, because they'll get the answer to the question that's on their lips, which is the question I just posed. I knew what he was going to say because I read Dr. Dyson's books, and I recommend them to you. And when we come back for the last segment, he has suggestions for what you ought to do in the beginning of 2020. And the Dalton School controversy is blowing up. We are not going to escape race. We're never going to escape race in America, but you can do things. And so when we come back, we'll conclude today's conversation with Dr. Dyson. Don't go anywhere. Except, however, to andrewandtodd.com. You do want to go to andrewandtodd.com. They are the specialists in real estate finance. They are with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. andrewandtodd.com lend you the money. They are not a go-between. They are not middlemen, middlewomen. They are actual lenders. So when you call 888-888-1172, you're connected with pros. And with this real estate market, you can't walk into a house and say, well, I'll be back in a week after I check to my mortgage lender. No, you got to come with a pre-qualification letter, put it on the table and say, I want to buy this house, and here's my pre-qualification. I have a loan at X%, and they get you the best rates, and they get you the best credit help you can get. They are absolutely fantastic, and my audience loves them because they get it done. andrewandtodd.com. And if you are a senior looking at a reverse mortgage, get money out of your house to make it easier to live, go to andrewandtodd.com or call 888-888-1172. Tell them Hugh sent you. Also, don't forget relieffactor.com. I tell you about Relief Factor in the first hour. I took it in the first hour. I'm reminding you during this conversation with Dr. Dyson, I'm reminding you every hour of every show. Take your relieffactor.com because it works. It really does. Support for the temporary relief of minor aches and pains after the show today. It rained like heck in California yesterday. I mean, it just deluged, but it will be a beautiful day to trundle, and I'm going to be out trundling this morning, and I'm going to feel great. Did 6 and 4 on the weekend, took a day off, and relieffactor.com has me back out there and trundling. You ought to use it too. And don't forget as well, honorboundcoffee.com. Please go and get your coffee, your New Year's resolution. Make it today. You're going to make every sip of coffee support military families across the United States, because every dollar of profit from honorboundcoffee.com goes into the pockets of organizations that serve military active duty spouses and their children. And that can be the Semper Fi Fund, the America's Fund, the Injured Marine Fund, all of it. All of it is taken care of, but you start by going to honorboundcoffee.com today. Relieffactor.com for yourself. Honorbound Coffee to get your coffee and to serve America's military. I'll come right back with Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. Stay tuned. Back, America. Hugh Hewitt. Michael Eric Dyson is not just a PhD professor at Vanderbilt. He's a prolific author, lecturer, commentator. I hope that you'll come back on the show. I wanted to introduce you to Long Time Coming and Tears We Cannot Stop, because I think they're very useful for people to read, even if you're not going to agree with Dr. Dyson on political matters. So, Dr. Dyson, are you ever invited on shows to comment on other than racial matters? Because it seems to me one of the problems in American politics is that we categorize experts and leave them in that category.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Fortunately, I have. I mean, with a PhD in religion, I've talked about a broad variety of topics in religious life, in political life, in social life. As it turns out, I have an interest in a whole broad range and raft of topics that have nothing to do with race and their origin. As it also turns out, race begins to, color our perception of a whole range of things that otherwise may seem to be exempt from the kind of tendrils that race can extend, or the tentacles that it can extend into the world. So as a result of that, I've been able to think critically and hopefully reflectively about a whole range of issues, to point out unanticipated alliances, affinities, and consequences of race, but also to talk about, hopefully with humor, and because I think humor is important, especially when you're dealing with folk who don't agree with you. Find some common ground, find some ability to not make things always as cosmic, as consequential as they often are, but to talk about our common humanity and the things we can hold in common.
So you probably know some of my friends. You probably know Cecil Murray and Mark Whitlock. I've done most of the things that you ask white people to do, which is to go to black church and to inhale the writing about race right now. But here's my last question. You have a long list of things to do, and I say to myself at the end of this, I try. But I mean, we got to worry about the Chinese Communist Party. They're throwing blacks in jail and from African blacks and blaming the coronavirus on them. We got to worry about, as we used to worry about the USSR, we got to worry about tax policy. I can't do race 24/7. I can't even begin to dig the first 6 feet of the 100-foot hole you want me to dig into racial matters. What's your response to that? I mean, I got to worry about the Chinese Communist Party, Dr. Dyson.
Look, I mean, we're all concerned about a whole range of things. The whole issue in dealing with race is we, as well, black people, have interests and ideas that have nothing to do with what white supremacy is about or social injustice and the like. For instance, look at the recent film, Sylvie's Love. It's a wonderful film. You can get it on Amazon Prime. And I'm not paid representative of that film, but let me say that the beautiful thing about it is it takes place in the, 60s in America, late 50s, early 60s. And it shows a black family, a man and a woman, interested in each other, love story. I don't want to give it away as a spoiler.
Please, I hate spoilers. Yeah.
Right. They weren't obsessed with white people. They weren't going, oh man, the white man is holding us down and so on and so forth. Because most black people are, concerned about what you're concerned about. They want to be concerned about that. The problem is they constantly are interrupted in that process. For instance, I'm sure you read this story in the New York Times today, where a renowned black jazz musician and his son are eating in the restaurant of a hotel, and the woman accosts the son saying, "You took my iPhone." Well, where's your proof? How do you know that? I don't even know you. We literally just came from our room. Don't know how my son could have taken your cell phone, and yet the manager of the hotel sides with the woman, automatically believes her story, doesn't ask any questions, and the like. And this is they're not obsessed with race. They're trying to get breakfast. They're trying to hang out together. And yet race keeps interrupting our lives. We don't have that kind of privilege to go about the world where we can only think about the stuff that bothers us that has nothing to do with race. I wish we could get to the same point. And in fact, the whole point of fighting racial oppression, of prejudice, of bigotry is to get to the point where everybody can do what they have to do without being obsessed with color, so that they can live their lives free of the encroachment and the impingements that prejudice, bigotry, and racism bring.
I could not have ended this. That's what I wanted to get to. That is Dr. Dyson's bottom line. It's why you ought to get Long Time Coming. And I really do. What's your favorite book? That you've got 20 children in between covers there, Dr. Dyson. Which is your favorite?
Boy, that's tough. The two Martin Luther King Jr. books I love a lot. The book on Tupac Shakur, the rapper, because it introduced me to a younger audience. But this book, A Long Time Coming, rates pretty highly as well, because you and I are both Christians. I get a chance to talk about the spirit, about culture, about religious principle and ideas that I think are critical to the formation and foundation of humanity and character in this country.
It is a great New Year's resolution to begin with. Long time coming. If you got a gift card from Barnes & Noble or Amazon, consider going to use it on Long Time Coming. I personally think Tears We Cannot Stop is wrenching, and people need to read it for that reason. But Dr. Dyson, thank you for spending so much time with me, being generous. It's a great way to end 2020 and begin 2021 on a better note. Thank you all for listening, America. I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Prison Fellowship. Click on the Angel Tree banner at the top of HughHewitt.com.